year and help you to have an idea of what goes on in specific sectors of the economy. And if you're already an investor or a client of CardinalStone Services, I'm sure you already have an idea of the rich data and information that the organization puts in your hand, with which you trade, you make investments, you create wealth, and make money. So we appreciate your making the time to be here this Thursday evening. Let me quickly do a few recognitions. We want to make this very quick. We have a very rich package of program to give to you. So let me say thank you very much to Michael and the rest of his team. Let's give him a round of applause for bringing us together. He's the Group Managing Director and the CEO of CardinalStone Partners. Mohammed Garba, founding partner, managing partner as well. Where are you, Garba? Okay, thank you very much. It's good to see you in the room. A round of applause for him. Femi Ogunjimi, managing partner and partner at the CardinalStone Capital Partners. I'm sure he's also somewhere around. They are friends of everyone here. Yomi Jemibewon, who is also a founding partner. Thank you all for coming. Give a round of applause. Thank you. I'm sure Eunice is somewhere. Oh, sorry. That's Elili Olitimayi. I want to be sure I got that correct. Okay. Thank you. Shirley Somwa, partner, CardinalStone Capital Partners. Are you around? Somewhere. All right. Let's give a round of applause in absentia. Thank you. Laulu Alabi, thank you very much, Executive Director. And we have many others. Let me just say a very big thank you to Taiwo Yodele, who is the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Tax Reforms and Fiscal Policies. Good to see you again. Thank you for coming. Carl Toriola, the Managing Director, CEO at MTN Nigeria, Communications Nigeria PLC. Thank you very much for making the time to be here. The Director General and the CEO at Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Almona. Thank you very much, madam. Good evening. Thanks for coming as well. We appreciate it. And let me just say a very big thank you online to Mr. Hubertus Rick, former, is he online? Can you bring him on? Let's just wave to him and say hello to him for coming on the line this evening to join us in this Investors Conclave. Thank you very much for coming. That's one expert in the world of e-commerce and retail business. So let's just, let me yield very quickly to a very small and very brief opening remarks from very good Erefemi Akeredolu, who is the CEO of CardinalStone Partners. Erefemi, you're here? Please, let's give a round of applause, please. Please step forward. You know, you have 4 male partners, but never give a CardinalStone trustees. I was just to say that instead of them, never give a woman's job to a man.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. And I would like to welcome our esteemed guests and our employees and colleagues. On behalf of the entire CardinalStone family, I am honored to welcome you to this year's Investors Conclave, our annual event offering strategic insight into economic outlook and practical strategies for leveraging opportunities and navigating challenges. The Investors Conclave is a cornerstone event of our commitment to fostering meaningful dialogue and creating opportunities while we drive mutual growth in our ecosystem. It reflects a dedication and the opportunities within our entire ecosystem. Today, we are gathered here as visionaries, decision makers, and collaborators, united by a shared goal of unlocking potential and creating value in the ever-evolving financial landscape. The theme of this conclave, Pressure to Plateau, Nigerian Renaissance Risk and Reward, offers a deep dive into Nigerian macroeconomic landscape and the key developments shaping the business and investment climate. At CardinalStone, we pride ourselves on building enduring relationships and delivering, We pride ourselves on building enduring relationships and delivering tailored solutions to meet the dynamic needs of our investors and stakeholders. This conclave serves as an extension of that commitment. It is a platform to exchange ideas, share insights, and collectively chart a path towards sustainable success. Over the next few hours, you will have the opportunity to gain valuable insight for some of the brightest minds across various industries. Our distinguished speakers will shed light on market trends, economic development, and investment strategies that will enable us thrive in today's economic environment. We encourage you to actively engage in this dialogue and connect with peers and thought leaders to take full advantage of the opportunities presented here today. Let this be a space not only to discover new possibilities, but to also strengthen the partnership that propel us forward. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today at CardinalStone. Together, let us exchange ideas, inspire one another, and enact actionable strategies that will provide financial leverage to both individuals and businesses. Once again, I would like to welcome everybody to the Investors Conclave 2025. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, making very good, Femi. Thank you, we appreciate that. Let's just put a few numbers to 2024 and a bit of an outlook into the new year, 2025. Let me ask Olaolu Boboye, who is the lead macroeconomic and fixed income research at CardinalStone, to step forward for a few minutes of a presentation, and then we move on to the keynote presentation. Laulu, you're here? Laulu, you have 20 minutes, but I'm going to ask for 10. I make a lot of money in 10 minutes. It's a whole lot of time. Speed of execution.
Okay, so good evening, everyone, and you're welcome to CardinalStone Investors Conclave. It's exciting to have everyone here. Why the slide comes up, I will just continue the presentation because of the time. First, I would love to provide a bit of historical perspective. If you look at where Nigeria has been coming from since way 2000s or even pre-2000s, it's been the earlier 2000s, it's been a year of reforms that have changed the dynamics for Nigeria. Take, for example, the telecommunication space, open up the likes of MTN and other telecommunication players to play in Nigeria. That has largely been supportive of GDP numbers at the entire economic outputs, be it from growth perspective, from employment perspective, and from other perspective. But I think down the line, post the first decade of this century, we switched to being mute in terms of the level of policies and in terms of reforms that were created. That reduced the magnitude of growth. At the point, Nigeria was expected to be, or was growing, at one of the fastest economy in the world, top 15. At a point, we were doing double-digit growth, but we came down to 5%. We came down below 5%. We came down to 2%. At the point, we went into a recession, especially given the fact that we were largely dependent on oil. But the dynamics, please let's go to the first slide, but the dynamics appears to be changing at current levels. No, next slide, please. We can leave this. Next slide. Appears to be changing because the story appears to be a bit different. Take, for example, we used to have capital restrictions. People could not take out their money from Nigeria. We had PMS subsidies and FX subsidies, which was taking over 10 trillion naira from the budget of the country annually. We had the CBN financing of the government. We had other issues that were prevalent in the economy. But now, we have FX, which is more market determined, which is what everybody here and other policymakers are clearly clamoring for. We have exchange rates being market reflective. We have more deregulation being prevalent in the energy sector. We have more liquidity in the FX markets. Take, for example, about $7 billion exited the market last year. There was no single news about it because there was enough liquidity to cater for everybody. We have the CBN switching from its non-traditional method to traditional method. Clearly, this has shown that we've gone back to the level where we used to make reforms, and this has shown that the struggles that Nigeria has faced over the last 5 years we appear to be coming to a level where we are comforting. And that was where brought about the topic from pressure to Plateau. And we think that going forward, one of the things that we need to do to take Nigeria back to where we used to be or where we should be is growing more productive jobs. In our report, we stated that Nigeria has one of the lowest unemployment in Africa and also globally. But when you look at the level of jobs that we have, more than 75% of it are in the informal sector. These informal guys, more than 75% of them, they make less than 250,000 profits on a monthly basis. So clearly, we don't have enough job or productive job to take us to where we should be. We think that there's need to manage the debt levels of Nigeria because debt levels have grown astronomically. And at a point, so people are even skeptical. Will Nigeria default? Are we going to be in the same situation as Ghana? We don't think so. Just to bring the tension down, we think that we are fine at this level. So let's move to the next slide. So clearly, it's a proof that we've moved from a lot of struggle to better position. I think one of the most topical news out there is the fact that Nigeria wants to rebase its GDP. First, I need to tell us that without rebasing of GDP, we think that this year, Nigeria will have done 3.7%, which will have been the highest in the last decade. It's a proof that there's an improvement. Post the rebasing of the GDP, we think that we would do 6%. When the rebasing was done in 2010, the economy grew in terms of percentage increase, an extra 3% of what the numbers did in prior year. So we think that that is going to play out again this year because just look at the sectors that government wants to add to the GDP. And I'll give us an example. In 2010, we barely had any major digital activities in the country. We don't have content creators. We don't have Nigerian celebrities shutting down O2 Arena back to back. We don't have fintech companies who have crossed the unicorn level, but that has changed. We have a few number of companies cross the unicorn level at current levels. We've had content creations. We've had other guys come into that digital space and other factors. We think that clearly, plus modular refineries, PFA's activities will drive growth to 6% by the end of this year. Next slide, please. And you can go to the next slide. I think that inflation is also a very topical one. People are worried that, or people are saying that post the rebasing of the GDP inflation, CPI rather, most likely inflation will moderate. I was speaking to a client recently who believed that inflation will come down to 17, 15%. Very optimistic. We try to do a bit of small exercise and I'll walk us through it. First, the government is doing changes in weightings. We need to state it clearly that regardless of the base year you pick, it doesn't influence inflation. What influences inflation is a function of the weight. So we try to look at the fact that government is reducing the food and government is reducing the housing, water, gas, and other for. What we did was simple. We tried to check the volatility in the food space, by running a small, simple standard deviation. We tried to check the volatility in the housing, water, gas, and other for HWGF. We discover that government or the agency moving the activities on food to restaurant and accommodation, which makes sense, and also moving part of the pressure point on housing, gas, and other fuel to transport inflation. We discovered that the food and HWGF has a lot of volatility. Now, you moving it away from that point, taking it to transport, and as well as taking it to restaurants and accommodation services, which are less volatile than those two that I mentioned, indicate that inflation might moderate a bit compared to what we currently have. Secondly, if you look at the difference between producers' index, which is measured by GDP deflator, and the current CPI numbers, that difference is what creates that disparity because producers' index is around 15%, CPI is over 33%. It's largely transports and other factors. If transport inflation, which is less volatile, plays out as expected, then it gives us a sense that inflation might be lower next year. So for us, without rebasing, we think that inflation will average about 30% this year compared to the average of 33% that we have last year. Next slide, please. We can leave this. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, I think that this will be the last slide. I would have loved to go into the global economy, but because of time. Again, like I said, we've moved from that point of elevated pressure to where we're a bit comforted, right? Last year, we were here, we threw a funny joke, although it was not funny out there, that between PMS and exchange rate, which will get to 1,005 first. I think FX won the race, but going forward, the dynamics is likely to change because we think the argument for Naira stability is stronger when you compare it to historical levels. Take, for example, the system that, the electronic system that the CBN has created has brought about price discovery. And I'll give us an example. Currently, we have a lot of demand pressure on FX, on that platform. Demand, as a matter of fact, is more than 10 times what supply is. Typically, historically, what you would have seen is that Naira will have moved because the quote that banks will give you is just arbitrary. But now, because the system is regulated and controlled, it has brought about stability of the Naira. When you look at other factors, that Nigeria has the highest carry trade in Africa, we have greater access to dollars, dollar debts, be it from local bond or Euro bond. We have positive current accounts, which speaks to fundamental that is positive. Currently, we have the latest number shows that current account position in Nigeria is $8 billion. If you adjust for errors and omission, we still have about $3 billion, right? Which is good for the reserve, and partly why the reserve has been growing big. And we think that this, going forward, the fact that people are clamoring for after, some countries, some neighboring countries are already having conversation with Dangote to be off-takers of Dangote's oil. If that should play out, Nigeria will begin to have a new export line, which is positive for our FX reserve and FX. So overall, we think that we're a bit bullish on Nigeria this year, and over the medium term, we think we've moved from that point of elevated pressure to where stability is beginning to step in. So thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoy your stay in the course of the program. Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Give it to Baboye. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I'm sure during the Q&A, a little bit later, there will be a bit of the global context into your presentation. Thank you very much. Let's make speed as we invite the man who's been in the news. I don't want to say eye of the storm. Taiwo Idile has had a very beautiful and great career in the private sector, but his recent journey into the political and governance arena seemed to have remake him. He's a born-again private sector person. But he's going to speak to us tonight at the Investors Conclave on the impact of the proposed tax reforms on investors, businesses, and the broader economy. And that will be very, very interesting. It's good to see you again. Put your hands together for him. And the final introduction of him, last week at the Governors Forum, he was christened a professor. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my brother. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to CardinalStone for inviting me to see my brothers here and sisters as well. So I would speak in about 15 to 20 minutes, because if you allow me, I can do this for 5 days. But we don't have 5 days. So if you can bring up the slides. So what I want to speak to you about is how the tax reforms would impact on investors, businesses, individuals, households, and the economy more generally. So if we start with that, you can go to that second slide. Okay. If the global tax system were race cars, this is what it would look like. Thank you. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, this should be better, right?
kill the other one completely. Thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry, ladies.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. So I was trying to make the point that if the global tax system were race cars, then Nigeria is that I think it's 1954. And then you see even in Africa, if you take leading economies in Africa like South Africa, you take Kenya, even Ghana, right? Morocco. Africa is not doing too badly in terms of their tax systems. So the average for Africa is far better than Nigeria. So this is like the regular Peugeot car. And here is where you find the developed economies. I thought to represent that with the OECD. And that's what they have. So now, if you're going to run a race with these cars, it doesn't matter how well you pray. Whether you have good or bad intentions is completely irrelevant. This is not a race that you can win. So the tax system is holding us back, holding us down, and coming in the way of progress because the system is unconducive for growth. It's actually hostile. We have all manners of taxes and taxing agencies. And part of it is the reason why we have high inflation, right? Which my friend just spoke about now. You look at some of those big items driving inflation within the CPI basket. Say food, for example. You see the difference between the rural inflation for food and the urban inflation as high as 500 basis points, 5%. So really, that should be accounted for by transportation. But then, when you transport produce in Nigeria, you incur more than transportation costs. There are taxes you pay at every mile, as high as 50 times, over 700,000 just for a truck carrying yam. So you're going to recover your costs, isn't it? The people in the city can't buy yam anymore. You have high corporate tax burden on businesses. Even though I've said this many times, people still don't understand it. And I need people to understand it so we can acknowledge there's a problem. And we can then say, let's find the solutions to it. Nigeria's corporate tax rate is 30%. Then there's education tax rate of 3%, which is a misrepresentation of the impact. The impact of the education tax rate is twice the impact of CIT. So to find the CIT equivalent of education tax, you multiply by 2. So that is what? 6%. You know why it's 6%? Because to calculate education tax, you use a different base. We call it accessible profit. In simple terms, you are not allowed to deduct the cost of assets. You only deduct overheads only. And if you want to do the maths, just look at FRS's CIT collection over the past 5-10 years and education tax collection and find the relationship between 30 and, in quote, 3%. You see that it's twice. In addition to that, you have NITDA levy. That's information technology. You have NASENI, engineering and science. You have to pay to do that. There's police fund, police trust fund. When you finish all those other taxes on profit, add it up. And whatever is left, when you're giving it to your shareholders, remember to deduct withholding tax at 10%. So effectively, when the investor receives the returns, they have suffered over 40% tax. This ranks Nigeria in the top 10 most heavily taxed in the world. In the whole world. There's no way you can be competitive like that. Especially when there's so many challenges that people don't face in other places. Then we're taxing poverty. Anything that moves, tax it. If it moves again, tax it even more. We spoke to a small business owner, and the woman said, it feels like the government is feasting on businesses. And that word stayed with me permanently because she was telling her story. At that time, she has closed down the business. A business that employed more than 20 people. Government is feasting. And I say to people, you can do a social experiment. Just do a banner. Yeah? Banner. Say, you want to do any business that comes to mind. It could be tailoring, it could be vulcanizer, it could be advisory services. Just put it by the roadside. Find a chair, go about 2 meters away, sit down, and watch what will happen. I guarantee you. Within 2 days, they'll come for business registration, business permits, advert levy. You have not even found one customer. You are not even sure whether you sell. All of it, as if it's a crime to want to start a business. But you know what normal countries do? You put out that banner and you receive a call. Are you aware of this credit facility for your sector? This capacity development. Would you be interested in this program? You need to support the logic. And this is common sense. Is that taxes are the outcomes and consequences of economic activities, right? So tax does not stand in isolation. It's the function of economic activities. If you want more taxes, allow more economic activities. Then remember that taxes in and of themselves are a means to an end, not an end in itself. The reason we collect taxes is so we can improve the lives, livelihood, and well-being of the people. So I have this equation that I work with, and that's what I just told you. Economic activities, taxes, and well-being. Any policy whatsoever, fiscal or otherwise, that distorts economic activities is a bad policy. Any policy that undermines the well-being of the people is a bad policy. So with that principle in mind, this system is not working and it cannot work. We're taxing poverty. We tax capital, by the way, easily. We don't even have any apologies. We also tax investments. Who does that? You want to build a factory today, you will pay VAT and you will not claim it back. You go to South Africa or you go to Kenya, you go to Ghana, you get it back 100%. So why don't we have that in Nigeria? And then we have a cake law. Some of them were written by the colonial masters. Some of them were written in like apologies, King James Version English. So when you finish reading it, first, you know, it's not like you are so excited to pay tax. And now you read the provision, you're not even sure what they are saying. Anyway, so let's move forward. I think there's no debate, which is why, even though the president has been misinterpreted and misunderstood, what Mr. President is saying is, I do not want to discuss and negotiate whether we need tax reforms. Why would anybody want to discuss that? But let's discuss content of the reforms. I'm happy for us to tweak. But don't ask me to go and withdraw my bills. We need the tax reforms. And you need a leader like that. Otherwise, just imagine what we have gone through in like 1 to 2 months. If you don't have that support from the highest level, we would have forgotten about the reforms and come back. I'll just come back and join Twitter Republic, who will complain. And I'll be so popular because I'll just join you in abusing government. Unfortunately, abusing government has never solved any problem. Okay, so this is my last slide, so don't worry about overspending time. I thought to put it all together. So what is it that we're now trying to do? The overall objective of the reforms are to facilitate economic growth. Remember that equation? Promote competitiveness. We want to be competitive. Mobilize revenue, and then improve the well-being of our people. So globally, because you can't operate in isolation, we are not an island to ourselves, we have to be mindful of what's happening elsewhere. In fact, when you talk about international competitiveness, it's relative because you are comparing yourself with other countries, so you must pay attention to what they do. And of course, one of the most popular topics around the world today is Donald Trump. And I find the man very fascinating and interesting. I will not tell you whether I like him or I don't like him, because I know what I say now. They will come and say Nigerian government does. I put on Twitter that because Donald Trump wants to set up external revenue service, I've never heard it before. Every country has internal revenue service. Trump says, no, why are we taxing Americans? Let's tax other countries. He wants to set up external revenue service. So I put up a post saying that these developments are a reminder that we need to take our reforms very seriously, because we need to be positioned to proactively address the consequences. And those consequences could be that there will be challenges. It could also be that they present opportunities. And then I saw in the newspaper the following day, Nigerian government speaks about, I said, how is it Nigerian government? So just clarifying in case we have media in the room. Yes, we do. I know you're my friend, so you will not misrepresent me. So you have what's happening and going on in the US. So you have that external revenue service on one hand, and the same government, the same president on the same day signed, he signed so many executive orders. And there's one he signed on the OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And he pretty much said to them that they're the whole world. Do not think that you can tax America. All these things that you guys are doing about base this, base that, pillar 1, pillar 2, we are not interested in it. And your rules will not be binding on the American people until such a time if we decide to enact it through Congress. So I said, fantastic. So somebody can actually decide that America is a different planet. They're able to tax the rest of the world. But the rest of the world can't tax Americans. I have a feeling that the president will be advised that you cannot set up external revenue service, and you have the U.S. Border Protection Agency already collecting tariffs. Because really, what you can collect, which is not from the rest of the world, but as a result of the rest of the world, is tariffs. But your people pay those tariffs. Okay, so then we have our local challenges, assuming there's nothing that is of concern to us in the US, EU is perfect, Asia has no issues. We have our own issues, and we need to be mindful of that. Fiscal constraints are there. We have low investment and a lot of divestments. And there are structural issues, which is very fundamental, because we're not trying to just put out the fire. We want to go to the source of the fire and deal with it. And that's what we say structural. And some of those structural interventions include our attempt to harmonize taxes and harmonize taxing agencies. So you carry that yam the next day, instead of 50 stops and 700,000, you find no stops at all. Because to be honest, they're selling yam. They're supposed to pay personal income tax if they sell yam profitably. Why are you chasing them when you are not even sure whether they've broken even in the price of yam? So that would also help with food inflation in particular, but also other produce and transportation generally. Then the second structural issue is formalization. It's interesting that in Nigeria, we have that large informal sector, which my friend told us just now. You look at employment data, and I think over 80% is informal employment. That same Nigeria discourages formalization because of the way the tax system has evolved. I'm not sure anybody set it up intentionally to discourage formalization. I'll just give you one or 2 points. If I have Taiwo Nigeria Limited, and I'm a honest person who wants to pay all taxes according to the law, I play by the books, I shall be paying over 40% of my profits in taxes to the government. If that Taiwo Limited had been just Taiwo and Co. or Enterprises that is not registered and I want to pay all taxes, you know I would not pay more than 19%, even if I made 100 million naira every single month. So which logical person will formalize so they can pay twice the tax when they can remain informal and not pay as much? That's even if they decide to pay at all. Then you also have the challenges around presumptive taxation. So you go around trying to do presumptive tax because there is no data, and you're not thinking about how do you encourage people to provide data and keep records. So in the tax reform, for example, what we have is, if you have records, you'll be exempted. Some people don't understand the exemption concept we're playing around with. Your business is small, 50 million naira or less, you don't pay tax. No CIT, no VAT, you're free. You earn income above this threshold or below, you don't pay tax. But if you don't have your record, we will do presumptive tax on you. What we are trying to do is to provide an incentive for you to formalize. Because now formalizing means I do not pay taxes. We also have the one around competitiveness within Africa and globally, so we stop taxing capital. And I gave you one example. Another example is there's something called minimum tax in Nigeria. It says when you're done doing your business, whether you make profit or not, or your profit is too little, we'll make you pay a certain amount of tax. It's called minimum tax. What you're actually doing, you're making businesses pay taxes out of their capital. It's one of the fastest ways to kill businesses. That is also being fixed in the tax reform bills. We also have investment credits. You can get input credit for your VAT and credit on services. Like CardinalStone, for example, they render services. Any VAT they incur now is their business. Government has no business in your VAT. By the time we are done with the tax reforms, you'll be able to claim input VAT. So, and you can imagine what manufacturers will claim. If service providers can claim as well. One of the secrets behind why we're doing that is also to be able to bring more people into the tax net. You know how it works? If you start a business, and all that you did was you bought a laptop, and you paid VAT, and you know that I can go to the taxman and get this VAT refund back. You will rush to the taxman because you are getting money back. But what the taxman is doing is capturing you on time before you change your mind. So now that we know your record, we'll pray for you for this business to succeed. And you pay the taxes subsequently. Another issue around that is, another structural reform is revenue, how we mobilize revenue, right? So we've created an intelligence system within the tax reform that says that if you are the guy who likes to under-declare things, you like to evade taxes, we want to make it very expensive for you. You know what? This goes beyond generating revenue. It's about fair play and equity. If you and I are in the same business, and you are the good guy, you pay all your taxes, I'm the guy who says, what's government doing for me? I'm a local government. I will justify, if you are not paying taxes in Nigeria, there's 1,001 reasons you can convince yourself that you are doing the right thing. If I'm getting away with not paying taxes, and my brother is paying taxes, what it means is that we're no longer operating at the same level playing field. If I don't like his face, I can actually price him out of that market and become a monopoly. So for two reasons, revenue mobilization and fair play, we need to fix this problem. And some of the things we put in the bills, if we import an item, microphone, for example, the incentive is to under-declare, so you don't pay the duties correctly. Feel free to do that. When it's time to file your corporate tax returns, you want to deduct as much as possible for the value of these microphones, so you do not pay corporate tax rates. The system we are developing will compare the two and say, sir, there's a problem here. Nobody sells to themselves. For every buyer, there's a seller. For every seller, there's a buyer. The system will compare the two. If there's a discrepancy, then you are disallowed. If it has VAT and you have not paid the VAT, you cannot do corporate tax deduction, right? Some people said, this is your minimum exemption for small business. Don't you think every business will now become minimum and small? I said, no, we'll be waiting for them. Now let them be small, because the system is going to track not only the beneficial ownership. If you like, go and be creating small businesses. Once you get to 49 million, create another business. Who will know? And when we are done with the system, if you import items, 1,000 mobile phones, you clear it, the system will capture it and help you record it in your inventory. That's part of the reason we're doing fiscalization of VAT. It will record the number of inventory on your behalf. As you sell, you're supposed to use the government-approved invoicing system. For every one you sell on the system will deduct one from your inventory. If you like, operate outside of the system and say, is it government that set up the business for me? And you are doing offline. When you submit your returns at the end of the year, your inventory will be lower than what is on the system. The system will say, did they disappear? You have not. So these are the amount of inventory you have not invoiced. Maybe I should summarize by saying that in 2025, we have to adopt a very different approach towards tax compliance. We must not put wood with nails on the street and on the road, chasing people and removing side mirror and their wares. Those are the things they did in 1914 when Nigeria was amalgamated. The world has moved on, and we can do these things today. So those are some of the things we have, those reforms. And we are removing distortion, whether it's tariff. A manufacturer came to us and said, I was trying to import the raw materials for what I produce, and it has this high tariff. But the finished good has no tariff at all. Duty-free finished goods. So the guy is questioning himself, why am I producing in Nigeria? Maybe Nigeria does not want anybody to produce. So I said, no, we want people to produce. It must have been a mistake. So we are fixing it. How do you tax raw materials, but you exempt the finished good that is imported? Doesn't make sense. We also have the things to do with the free zone. Free zone. The intention for free zone is for export. We have succeeded as a country in saying it's okay to be at the free zone and sell everything to the custom territory. In fact, we were going to companies that were already within the custom territory and designating them as free zones, so they will no longer pay taxes. Imagine what that means. We are in the same sector. You are a free zone. I'm not a free zone. I will use the last resource I have to get the free zone status, because that's my only way to survive. And if we turn the whole country to a free zone, there shall be no taxes for the government anymore. And people don't realize that when government cannot collect taxes that is legislated, they collect the taxes from you by printing money. You know, every time government prints money, the money you have in your wallet, in your bank account, goes down proportionately. But you will never go on the street and say, tax has gone up. So government is collecting taxes from you, but in a very suboptimal way. And that method of collecting taxes is also regressive, because it punishes low-income earners more than high-income earners who also have assets. So we're fixing that as well. We are revamping the incentive regime. We now have what we call priority sector incentive scheme. There shall be no more pioneer status. What are we pioneering? So let's just say there's a sector that is a priority sector for Nigeria, and for this period of time, we'll give you incentives. Then finally as well, around the fiscal reforms, the structural reforms, is we also have something as simple as asking companies to pay taxes, levies, and regulatory fees in dollars in Nigeria. This is about $4 billion a year. Unnecessary pressure that will place on the market. It does not add to our liquidity, but it adds to our demand. We're taking that off. And there's also something like, you want to find FX, they say, go and bring tax clearance certificates. The more you put restrictions and roadblocks to forex transaction in the official market, the more you motivate and promote the premium in the parallel market. The more you have the premium in the parallel market, the more you create economic distortion because people will be round tripping. So we're also fixing that. I decided to a few of these things with you because I know the conversation around VAT sharing formula. Some people even think that the whole tax reform is just to share VAT, right? There are over 200 transformative reforms in those bills. So I've just taken you through some of them. So those are the fiscal reforms. What are the outcomes we expect? Of course, we think that the fiscal aspect now will be able to contribute to macroeconomic stability, fiscal consolidation, and acceleration of growth. This is a very popular thing you hear in Nigeria. They say the fiscal side is not playing their part, right? They're not coming to the table. People don't realize that these reforms are part of the fiscal reforms, and they're important. We expect our fiscal indicators to improve. From tax to GDP ratio, we're just finalizing the tax to GDP ratio for 2024, and it's looking good already. I think we're going to end up with around about 12.5. Our target is to get to about 18% in the next 3 years, even after the GDP rebasing. Ways and means, we're happy it's not growing, and government has a commitment not to print money to spend or to finance the budget deficits. We also have recommendations around spending quality. People don't know we're also working on spending as well as borrowing, and to reduce the tax burden on the people generally. So I will wrap up with my outlook. One is both oil and non-oil revenues will be significantly better in 2025 than in 2024. Facts. If not for anything, subsidy on fuel is about 2.2% of GDP. FX subsidy is about 3% of GDP. So we have at least 5% of GDP that we're saving now in 2025. And it is the first time in our history, October last year, that we truly deregulated PMS pricing. Because it's the first time that the NMPC is not coming to tell us the pump price. So that is revenue. In addition to that, volumes are already going up for production. We're now around 1.9 million. Some people think that 2 million in the budget is not realistic. It's realistic. Rig counts are up 78%. So you know when there is activities to produce more, the numbers will tell you. Nigeria is now back to being the #1 destination for investment in all our gas sector. We've now overtaken Angola. So those are indications that production volumes will go up. If you're already at 1.9, that is including condensates, to find another 100,000 is not out of reach. So I think that is realistic. How about inflation? People say, where did they find 15% from? And I say, so what's wrong with 15%? And I'll tell you the way I see it, and you don't need to agree with me, right? There's the base effect. Base effect means, at least in this context, last year the average inflation was 33%. So we started at 100, ended 133 on the average. If the pressure on inflation remains the same as 2024, and prices go up by another 33 naira, right? You are now doing 33 over 133. That gives you 25. So without doing anything and just playing on the base effect, we'll have inflation for this year at 25%. Fact. But if you think about what caused inflation to go up significantly in 2024, those factors no longer exist, or at least to a very limited extent only. Number one, the FX pass-through. 900 was where we started. We ended at 1,550. At some point, it was 1,900. That's massive impact on cost. Number two, energy prices. Energy prices will show up in diesel, and I'm sure my brother will testify to that. Just imagine powering your stations with diesel 24 hours, and the price has gone up multiple times. The same thing with petrol. We're not going to have that anymore. The outlook is, the other thing that adds to inflation apart from the price of energy, right? You know, that also includes band A. is the fact that for fuel products, whenever you have scarcity, it escalates costs. Do you agree with me? Now, we're not going to have scarcity because we now have supply security. There's Dangote there begging people to come and take fuel. Dangote now is our reserve of fuel. Can supply many days of product. So you guarantee the supply, and then we don't expect. With Trump saying you should drill and drill and drill more, not believing in the environment, you can expect one direction. America will be by far, they will expand the gap between them and number 2 oil-producing country in the world. They will produce and produce. They want to start exporting, right? So that will mean that outlook, most likely, will be less than even the 75 we have in the budget. But I think it's good news because that will help us bring down costs and therefore improve outputs. And that will compensate for the revenue that government will lose to the federation account as a result of lower prices of oil. And of course, we also have the ones coming from the fiscal side, but I hold the view that by just spending alone, the fiscal side does not complicate inflation for anyone. They complicate inflation when they introduce new money that is not supported by output. In other words, when you print waste and means plus interest of 40 trillion, what were you expecting? There will be inflation because there's no corresponding output. So the impact of that has now already been assimilated by the system. So it's not supposed to repeat itself in 2025. Overall, if prices remain, maybe some people also misinterpret inflation or 15% target, right? I know it's ambitious, it's optimistic, but I think it's achievable. 15% inflation does not mean that prices will come down. We're saying prices will still go up over and above what they were in 2024, but at a slower pace. So, anybody that thinks that it should be higher than that should come and tell me their data points. So growth is expected to improve, and we expect that the student loans, the minimum wage, the tax exemption, and the consumer credit will put more purchasing power into the hands of people. So if you're a poor person and you were saving all the money you could find and borrowing from cooperative to pay school fees, now you don't need to pay that school fees. Your child gets the loan, and the money you were using to pay the school fees before, you can now use it for consumption, right? You see, that's how it plays out. So the student loan would also eventually translate to like consumer credit. And then there's consumer credit as of itself, more spending on infrastructure, and then what the rest of the world is doing. So in conclusion, all of these will measure progress when we see the enabling environment improving, and the way you will know is confidence will be restored. When you have foreign portfolio investors coming in, it's an indication of short-term confidence. When you see FDI, it's an indication of long-term confidence. So we are at that journey now. We've seen FPI, it's been sustained, and we expect that FDI will start coming in. Better policy coordination, particularly monetary, fiscal, and trade, fair taxation, responsible borrowing, and sustainable spending. And in conclusion, all of this means okay to pray, okay to hope, okay to be optimistic. You can even prophesize if you want, but the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what we're trying to do. Thank you very much for paying attention to me.
Yeah, hold on a second. A round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Would you kindly bring back the cars? Yes, the cars. Where's the slide for the cars? Yeah, that's the first slide of this presentation. Thank you, because we're going to the panel right now. And by that's Tawi Udili, by way of introduction. Yes, thank you very much. Now you can take a seat. Okay. A round of applause for him, please. So we want to make cars, and there's Elon Musk down there. Let me use my panelists. Carl Toriola, let's put our hands together for him. Managing Director at MTN. Please take a seat. No, over here, and for a strategic reason, my Director General at the LCCI. Put your hands together for Dr. Alimona. Please step forward. And where's Oluwale Adelakunwo for KPMG, a partner at KPMG? Thank you very much. Yes, please come in. You know, I was sitting in my hotel room a couple of years ago when I ran into this BBC documentary about the creation of the FBI, the man Edgar Hoover. And if you understand a bit of what Taiwo Idile and the rest of his team are doing, you will understand, if you read the history of the FBI and why it remains the #1 security agency in the world, it's simply because of data. The first thing that Edgar Hoover did on the ground when he was signed on by the president to set it up was to set up data. There was so much crime, in particular by big men, wealthy men, judges, legislators. And when he was asked to set up the FBI, he said, how do we go after arresting people when we don't even know where they live? Where does he worship? Where is the club? Where does his mistress live? So the first thing he did was to send out the FBI officers to collect data. He said, first, gather data. So when you said you want to arrest Mr. or Mrs. X, they have an idea of wherever you can be in the United States. So the effectiveness of the system is that there is data. So they built massive data. They now says, let's go after everybody. So Taiwo Idile, thank you very much for what you're doing together. Let's give another round of applause. Now we're building Nigeria's FBI and ensuring that the system finds you, whatever you're doing, but it also compensates you and make business happen and make investors happy. And my heart was bleeding when we talk about 40% for investors in the Nigerian market. And I'm sure our clients don't like it at CardinalStone at 40%. They can do a whole lot. I know my friends wouldn't like 40%, wouldn't mind 40%, but on investors, that is not so good. Let's start this conversation. Let me just say very big thank you to online. Let me just bring on the gentleman who is a very big name in retail e-commerce. Hubertus Rick, are you there for us tonight? Could you please punch him on if he's available online? He's one of my panelists and is joining us on the line for this discussion. Hey, it's great to see you. Okay, I think we're going to get to him just very quickly. Taiwo, that was very great. Let me start with Carl, because I want us to, between Carl and our partner from KPMG, when we talk about doing business in Nigeria and some of the things that Taiwo Idile spoke about in terms of fiscal reforms, and I'm sure we've seen recent macroeconomic reforms, and we want to find out how these have impacted on your industry, telecommunications, and let's just start from there. Raise the curtain for me. Yes, it does.
But doesn't seem to very,
yes, it's
very loud.
Yeah, very nice
okay.
voice.
First of all, I've met a lot of tax people in my lifetime. I've never met one as humorous as Taiwo. He's a great salesman for the story of tax reform and captivating. And I'm not very effusive with words, but I really mean that. So look, let me start off by saying that I share the optimism about 2025. I think we're headed in the right direction. I think we've borne a lot of pain, 2023, 24, but the worst is over. And we've borne a lot of pain by moving towards free market economics. We haven't even seen the advantage of the tax reform yet. That will happen once the bill is fully passed and executed. But what this allows us is to be an efficient economy. Now, for my industry, it has obviously been painful. The price of diesel from 2022 till now has gone up about 380%. Foreign exchange, the price at which we procure foreign exchange to expand our networks has gone from 465 to 1,565 odd. So it's been very, very painful. And there is one step, as far as I'm concerned, that's critical in moving towards free market economics, and that's allowing the telecoms industry in particular to have the ability to set prices and be moderated by competition, just as the fuel prices today are done, and the price of food, cars, whatever else it is that you can. So it's been very impactful, the move to free market economics. It's had a negative impact on the short term, but I think on a long-term basis it will create huge opportunities for the entire economy. And you know now that at least we have the authorization for the tariff increase. And the potential that the telecoms industry has to drive other sectors of the economy is tremendous. Digital penetration in the financial services ecosystem has a potential for payments to go from 5.5 trillion in 2019 to, and it's gone now to 566 trillion in 2024. So that has an exponential potential to grow. We're probably still in the range of 60% cash transactions, particularly in rural areas. Agriculture can add an additional 3.3 trillion by 2028. Manufacturing has the potential to add 465 jobs between now and 2028, and the same goes for healthcare, trade, etc., etc. So to ensure I'm not hogging the microphone, I think I'll leave it at that and allow you to continue, Bosun. Thanks.
I love that so much. I'm going to come back to a few of the issues around regulatory environment and how you're dealing with this in our own environment. But let me ask Oluwole at KPMG, when you talk about the strategic implications of recent reforms, how do you think businesses can adapt? What do you think the strategic priorities should be for businesses, considering not just what the environment had been, but what Taiwo Udile and the rest of his team are bringing to the table, not just in terms of tax, but in terms of fiscal policy reforms as well?
Okay, thank you, and thanks for the privilege of being here. I think from what has been said thus far, it's clear that the period of pressure, like it was noted, is gone. The volatility is gone. And we're now at a period where you can actually take advantage of the opportunity in the marketplace. And what we've seen working with different clients is that despite the pressure we had last year, several investors as well as businesses are taking advantage of the opportunity within the market. And I'll give some example and then wrap up with what businesses can actually do. So following the fuel subsidy removal, we had a couple of business guys reaching out to the Big Four, and KPMG being one of them, looking at taking advantage of opportunity in CNG. Some actually looking at opportunity in having LNG powered truck that you can actually use to deliver product across the country. This conversation went as far as even the northern parts of the country. Had opportunity of meeting, with some of the governors in the northeast, and the question they're asking is, so what are the opportunities within the landscape? So to summarize, what has happened has actually opened up this economy because you're now moving on to equilibrium market. So what should business do? I think there is a need to, one, be agile, in terms of response to the opportunity in the marketplace. I can tell you that several people outside are looking to come in. So be extremely agile to actually, take advantage. I think the second is to demonstrate confidence in this economy. That will be very, very important. The third thing that I think is also very important is, yes, we know that inflation will actually reduce based on the change in terms of the basket as well as the weight, but we still have, high cost. So cost optimization will be extremely important. It doesn't mean cost reduction per se. It's extremely important that we look at how we can actually focus on those specific things that deliver value, and then, like has been said, be more efficient. I think those are the things that is extremely important to actually take advantage of the opportunity in the marketplace. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Dr. Alimona from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much, Madam Director General. You listened very attentively to Boboye's presentation in terms of outlook, and I saw you also listened very attentively to Taiwo Yedele. So, based on the fact that you're a member of the Nigerian Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee, what are your views on the spirited attempts and efforts being made to ensure that we have necessary adjustments that can give us some measure of long-term economic viability and sustainability upon which businesses and investors can plan moving forward? Let's have a bit of a future outlook from here onward.
Hello, good evening, everyone, and thanks to CardinalStone for this session. Since I'm a member of the committee, the presidential committee, anything I say will be like self-assessment because I'm a member of the committee, so of course I'll promote what we have done and all the effort that we have put in. But having said that, from the Chamber's perspective, and we kind of cut across several sectors, the last 2 years have been quite difficult across all those sectors because it's been difficult to do business, but also just having to tackle the issues around taxation. The effort that businesses are putting in to try and accommodate tax officials and the challenges and the time that they spend discussing, negotiating taxation and all that. It's a lot of effort and businesses are challenged by it. So the reforms that we have come up with and we've been discussing for many months now are positioned to help businesses to reduce costs of doing business, but also reduce the nuisance, the challenges of just engaging with these tax elements or these agencies. There are so many agencies that collect taxes. I have my members at different times, at the middle of the night, people stop you on the road and they're charging different things. And certain times when you are stopped, you have to pay. It just makes sense to pay and get it out of the way. If you are importing an item and custom tells you, no, the HS code you're using is the wrong one. If you don't agree with them, you may spend like 3 months arguing if it's the right one or the wrong one. And while you're arguing, the demurrage is counting. At the end of the day, you have to pay. So sometimes businesses are saying, look, let's just pay and get on. And all of those type of activities will affect the confidence level, of course, but even those who want to invest in Nigeria, they then look in and they see that businesses are struggling, and that affects their ability to make the decision to invest in Nigeria. So for us, it's a welcome development. We are advocating seriously that the noise around it will reduce, and we can just get on with the business of the day. But the business community is waiting for these reforms to kick in so that we can begin to smile, we can enjoy the benefits.
Hold the floor, Madam Director General. Thank you very much. Culturally, as a sector, telecommunications has given birth to many babies since the advent of the GSM, as it were. So now, where we are right now in terms of the fiscal policy reforms and tax reforms, what sectors do you think, and I'm sure you've got a lot of experience in risk management and business setup, what sectors do you think or should we look up to in terms of this new reform agenda that we think will bring things up for us, that will create jobs, like Taiwo, like Boboye put in his own presentation, that the #1 outlook is for us to create jobs that are decent and can afford government to pay tax and make more businesses evolve. Do you have any sectors in mind specifically, Madam Director General?
The sectors that will come to mind, of course, will be like the manufacturing sector, the industrial sector, because they create a lot of jobs. And if we get the manufacturing sector working, then we will enhance productivity and we'll begin to produce. If we encourage them to grow, then we're producing some of the things that we hitherto import. So it will help us to retain and strengthen our naira. So the manufacturing sector is that sector that we need to pay attention to. We also need to pay attention to the agricultural sector. We talk about food security, but I think we just talk and do nothing, because every time we hear stories of our members who have farms in different areas of Nigeria and the challenges they have with going to the farm. So the security issue affects them, but also the road network and moving their goods here and there. So the agricultural sector will benefit from this. They also create a lot of jobs, because we need the sectors that can create a lot of jobs. But you also have the techs, the tech companies, and now we have fintech, edutech, agritech, tech in a lot of ways. The technology enables business, so businesses are more efficient, and then if they're more efficient, of course, they'll be more productive and more profitable.
Thank you. Everything we've talked about here, and Carl, and I saw in the news, hundreds of millions of rands, if not billions, that MTN had to spend in South Africa because of the ESCOM problem in buying batteries to sustain businesses down there. I'm sure we can't have any of this conversation without the power sector. So, talk to Oluwole about the power sector challenges and opportunities. What else do we need to do different in the power sector, and how quickly do we need to do that to support what Taiwo and the rest of his team are doing in terms of fiscal reforms?
Thanks. With regards to power sector, you're extremely correct, because it's one of the key sectors to drive growth. And we've seen some progress being made based on some of the reforms that have been introduced. So in addition to what has been done, I think there are three main areas that are extremely important that I believe government can focus on and businesses can actually take advantage of. One is the conversation around our grid operation, being able to, if you look at our population, being able to actually decentralize that and then take advantage of mini grid, take advantage of going into renewable and providing incentives and support to actually drive investment in that those specific area. And we've seen certain, even regulators, actually helping to support with regards to that. An example, which based on one of the problems that the challenge faced by the telecom industry, NCC is also thinking around, how do we have a policy in place to accelerate, renewable energy within the telecom space? So that's an area that I think opportunity exists. I think the second area within power is a conversation around our transmission. Evacuation is extremely challenged today when you look at the capacity that we have in terms of generation, but we've seen consistently the grid collapse. So being able to actually fix that will be extremely important. What has been done in other markets is, like India, is basically to unbundle, similar to what we did when we started in 2005. We can actually move in the direction of unbundling that. There are concerns around security-related matters, but it's been done elsewhere. So opportunity exists to actually learn from what has been done and take advantage of that. So being able to unlock investment in transmission will be extremely critical. Now, the third area that I think is important in power is with regards to accelerating what we've started with regards to creating Band A. In having conversation and working with businesses, what we've even found out is that some of the players within even the corporate as well as SMEs that have within Band A and they have constant power supply, and this is based on data on the street, they actually prefer to move to Band A because in terms of the supply, is more guaranteed and consistent within certain locations. I mean, I was in a conversation in Abuja, and that's one of the things I was actually confirmed. So what that means is that if you accelerate regulatory reform and move it to a cost-reflective tariff, that would actually stimulate investment, because the significant subsidy in that space is not sustainable. If we want to actually get, investment to come in, that's, regulatory reforms that move us in the direction of a cost-reflective tariff will be extremely important. The last one I would say is unlocking the gas potential that we have to actually, and there is MDGI that is available and some ongoing conversation within that space. I think within government, especially if you look at the conversation around energy and what has been done by the team, the SA, energy, SA energy to the president. So there are opportunity within gas. So those are the 4 areas I would say with regards to power. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move a little bit from brick and mortar economy to technological innovation, adoption, Carl, and digital divide. President Trump is looking at 500, is it 200 or 500 billion dollars in AI that is just throwing out there, whether that is realistic or not. Now, because I want to take this to Rick a little bit later on. So how much more would you, MTN and the rest of your folks in the industry and of course the ecosystem of telecommunications in Nigeria, fintech and all that, we want to see more access to telecommunication, digital services in rural and more of the urban areas as well. I want to see adoption of the AI and a lot of other. What more can you deliver with big names such as Starlink coming across into Africa and spreading its wings?
Okay, so I'm going to, in my response, maybe take a step back to some of the points that we made earlier on. The first thing I would say is that what free market economics do is it forces the players in the markets to become competitive. Competitive in their markets and on a global scale. And I think that's why it's good for us. There's been certain pain that's been borne, but it's good for us in the long term. That's one. And why is it good for us? Capital always goes to where it gets the best return. If you're not competitive, you cannot produce at a better cost than other countries and where it has the most security. And what capital wants is predictability. Capital actually doesn't mind if your currency continues to devaluate on a steady basis, but the predictability of that allows them to plan that in. That's one. I don't claim to know the energy sector as well as anyone on this table, but I actually think that something is going to happen in the energy sector that's going to surprise everyone. We're going to bypass, to a large extent, a lot of the traditional generation, transmission, distribution infrastructure. Because if you take the total cost of ownership of a really robust solar system today that does 30 kVA, it costs less in terms of total cost of ownership than a combination of band A, generator, and diesel. The challenge that most people face is the initial capital outlay. But somebody smart, probably somebody in this room, is going to find the financial structure to offer these people on a lease basis, and they pay it over time, and they will still pay less than they're paying band A. So I think there's going to be, it's going to start slowly, but it's going to be a massive swell of movement towards solar, battery storage, etc. And the productivity of solar panels has gone up like 8-fold in the last 2 years. So even though you don't have a lot of roof space, all of a sudden you can actually generate enough to sustain yourself. So that's one. There's a huge potential. First of all, I think we know Elon Musk has started to fight Donald Trump over this 500 billion. We'll see how that plays out. 2 characters of that sort in one team is going to be an interesting study in human psychology. There's a huge potential that telecommunications and the technological services industry can do today. And I spoke to some of the numbers earlier. First of all, there's the penetration of internet services, acceleration of fiber across the country. Then there's the further digitization of the rural areas that are really not yet transacting the financial services, still using cash, still managing all of the activities in that space. Excuse me. And that has a positive acceleration effect on multiple industries. And that's why we believe that telecoms is so central to the entire economy that if you don't allow it to operate a free market economics and you're not subsidizing it either, it's going to collapse. But the impact is going to be much greater than just the telecoms industry. It's going to cut across the entire economy. Now, there's so many technological solutions that are out there, and artificial intelligence is the big one. What technology does is it increases productivity. And productivity is how a lot of the great generational wealth for countries is built. There's extraction, manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera. And it gives us an opportunity to accelerate and start to catch up with the rest of the world. Artificial is very interesting. Artificial intelligence is very interesting, but at this point in time, it's very expensive, right? But there's now a Chinese company that's producing AI at an eighth of the cost of GPT, and so on and so forth. And that's going to evolve. That's what technology does. Boyle's law, continuous shrinkage, continuous efficiency. And once it starts to become affordable within the Nigerian context, what you'll see is so much innovation from new business creators, idea creators, that's going to drive a lot of the economic activity that's going to happen in Nigeria. The DG, I'm not sure, the managing director of LCCI, spoke about manufacturing, absolutely critical for jobs generation, but there's so much opportunity in services that you can't even imagine. I spoke, I think it was on TV some time ago. There's a tutor of mathematics in Nigeria that is offering lessons in mathematics to United States-based students for $12 an hour compared to $100 an hour that they're paying for the same tutorship in the USA. That's one example. I've actually started to hear that people that live in, say, the UK with an inefficient health system are starting to travel to Nigeria for medical treatment because they can get an immediate appointment if they feel secure with the quality of service. So, I mean, there's so many shifts, a lot of them enabled by technology, huge potential to accelerate this economy through that. We could talk till the cows come in on the subject.
Yes, I know. I just wanted to stop you very quickly because I'm sure Taiwo is taking note of that $12. Guy's charging $12. He needs all the tax. He's busy. I know what you're up to. You wouldn't miss that in that comment. But let's bring on Rick, by the way. Rick, it's good to have you. I wanted you to listen to what we're saying in the room and then bring your experience. By the way, Rick is an e-commerce and retail's market. He's a former CEO of ShopRite, and of course, is a man who, the go-to man when it comes to the world of e-commerce, technology, and innovation. Good to see you, Rick.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you've listened to all of us so far. So, in terms of technology and innovation and allowing adoption of technology to drive e-commerce, we have a very huge retail market in Nigeria. E-commerce, the largest in Africa, going by the numbers, as it were. But we've seen recent reforms, I'm sure you know about that have shrunk consumers' pockets and all of that. So, what are your thoughts, Rick? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Thank you. So, simple thing in retail, the more money is in the market, the more spending you have in retail. The less money is in the market, so if you have economic crisis, the sales in retail go down right away. Coming to the e-commerce, that's interesting, but it's based on infrastructure. If the infrastructure is not there, it's extremely difficult to make a good business or profits in e-commerce. Let's say payment systems, for example. If you order something here, you go to PayPal, you pay, and the producer gets his money. So then he sends out the parcels, and they receive. The consumer receives the parcel. But then the product is not fitting, so he has to send it back. Now, how to return the money if you have a cash business? That's nearly impossible. So, but with a working digital market, PayPal is returning the money to the customer. Just to give you a number, in Germany or in Europe in general, 56% of all parcels are returned to the producer. So this is more than they sell. So that has to be covered, needs to be possible. The next thing is the logistics. So these parcels have to come from Lagos to Enugu. Yeah? So how does the travel go? So if the roads are not there, if a parcel service is not existing, then all this is not working. So that's the first investment into infrastructure that the parcels can go to the customers. What we have today in Lagos is basically, we have a producer, local producer, and they use companies like Glovo or Chowdek to transport their products with a bicycle, so a motorcycle. And the cycle drivers take cash from the people. But what happens if they don't like the product? You know, how do they return the cash? So therefore, infrastructure is important. And if we have the digital infrastructure and the road infrastructure, trains, airports, roads, rivers, then I think e-commerce can have a huge future here.
All right, thank you so much, Rick. Just talk about infrastructure. So I'm going to go straight to you, KPMG, Oluwole, in terms of infrastructure development and public-private sector collaboration. Why is it a little bit difficult for us to let that be a game changer? Infrastructure, when I talk about Tanzania, whether it's Kenya, with their Adani Group, doing multi-billion-dollar deal for ports and whatever logistics and all of that. So why is it a bit difficult for us to get it done here? To have businesses, and then that will make more tax, more reform coming and all that.
Okay, thanks. Very, very good question. And I would say thank God we have Taiwo here. He's more closer to government than me, so it would take some of the message to them. So, I mean, we all know that infrastructure is key in terms of accelerating economic growth. But why has it been a challenge, in Nigeria?
What do we need to do differently?
So what we need to do differently, number one, I think the first is around the regulatory system. It needs to be fixed in such a way that you honor contracts. That is extremely important. An example here is the one for this Lekki toll. We've seen what has happened. I know ARM then and some of the guys that were in charge, but being able to honor contracts is extremely important. I think the second thing that is also very important is transparent procurement system. Is extremely important as well to be able to attract the right investment. I think the last one will be providing that incentives and also having guarantee in place that in case there is a default, there is a means to actually bankroll the default. So those are some of the things that I think will be extremely important that we need to do differently to be able to unlock. The final one is also, and I think this government is actually moving in that direction, being able to actually get the subnational that are within the same geopolitical zones to actually come together in a way that you can connect the various states together. If you can do that as well, because that will also help you to actually be able to make that investment, because it has to be able to help you transport goods. So coordinating and working with around at the subnational level, beyond the things I've said, would also be important to actually unlock value.
Madam Director General, Dr. Alimona, do you think the private sector can help? Private capital, do you think can help in terms of bringing this much needed money to the table, supporting the government to deliver some of this infrastructure? How much do you think the private sector can do?
So the private sector has a great role to play in any environment where you need a lot of infrastructure. And that's why we're where we are. And the point he's made, these are the challenges that the private sector is facing in engaging with government. So if it's difficult to honor contracts, then you're not quite sure that if you go into this business, you agree, you bring in capital, that it will work. You also then have the challenges with transparency and reporting and monitoring, even that transaction. You have cases, we've heard stories where you have the private sector person who is willing to bring in the funds, but the government officials who have, multiple ways or things that you need to pay for without even beginning the contract, the work itself. And that depletes the funding, but also it depletes the trust. There's no trust in the system. So there's, I think if we can deal with everything he said, transparency and the rule of law, then you have the private sector play. But I believe that the private sector is willing. I think the private sector is willing. We have the funds to bring to the table, but we need government to meet us and create an enabling environment. So if we talk a lot about ease of doing business, but we never do anything about it. So if it's so challenging to even get through with getting the infrastructure done, or getting the project executed, then a private sector player is not going to be dilly-dallying when there's there's a cost to the funding, right? So you're not going to play around and waste time and spend so much. You don't want to do that. You want an efficient process and efficient execution, and you want to get it done and move on. But government, there's a lot of delay on the side of government a lot of times, and then the private sector player is at the losing end. So yes, we have a role to play. We are willing to play that role, but there are so many challenges.
Yeah, because our neighbors are stealing our lunch. One of Nigeria's listed energy company just got an oil block in Angola. They is streamlining things now over there that almost everyone who's doing oil and gas is going to Angola because it takes just
ease of doing business. Yes. It's a big thing, yes. Because if there are so many bottlenecks, then you never get through. You are so frustrated. Sometimes you see business people that are so frustrated with what's going on, with the delays, with even just having conversations at the ministry, moving far from one place to the other. These things are so difficult. But then technology can deal with a lot of these things. Why don't we just deploy technology and remove a lot of the human interventions, and things will go better.
Well, thank you, Madam Director General. Rick, let's get back to you on the retail side. Talk to me about the opportunities and risks for retail business in Nigeria. Where do you see opportunities? Where do you see the risks? And what do you think businesses can do strategically?
A lot of people would want to eat affordable food. Yeah. So therefore, we can sell more than Nigeria can produce. And I think that's a problem, is the import now. So opportunity is to loosen the imports, reducing the NAFDAC regulations to import products more easily, to provide more products to people in Nigeria. So, and cost-effective and cheap products. If we have this competition going on, also Nigerian production will be more competitive and will produce better products and better quality. So for retailers to drive their sales, their opportunity is basically to offer cheap food. Cheap means affordable food in daily needed products. Daily needed product is rice, is bread, is flour, drinks, water, whatever you need on daily basis, they should have it. The next step then is to produce private labels, and that can be done in Nigeria. Private label is a brand from a retailer, ShopRite brand or whatever retailer can produce his own brand and have a good quality and a low price. That will drive the products. But what are the challenges? I mean, everybody mentioned it already, energy cost. In retail, we pay 9 to 10% of our P&L is energy. Personnel cost is 3%, rent is 3 to 4%. So in other countries, we pay 1-2% for energy, and we pay 10% for rent and personnel costs. So there is a big challenge on that side.
All right, thank you so much, Rick, and to all my panelists. Let me just throw this to the audience very quickly, my guests, and for these questions for members of the panel. Let's just quickly take a few before we begin to summarize. To Terry Dele, to Carl, to Madam Director General, to Rick, or to our partner from KPMG. Any questions from the audience, please? Or from the presentation you had earlier? Please just, we'll take just about one question per person. Kindly identify yourself. And don't declare your portfolio in CardinalStone, how much you have it. Okay, let's have the mic roving very quickly, as many questions as possible very quickly for about 5 minutes. Fortunately, I can't see any hands up. That's good. No, that's because the hands were not up high enough. Thank you. Where are the roving microphones? And I can give mine. We have extras. Yeah, if there are no extras over there. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Let's go with the gentleman sitting close to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and Taiwo. Fantastic presentation. Just wanted to find out, you said there were about 200 reforms in the policy going through approvals. I wanted to know if there was something in there to cater for double taxation treaties, Nigeria and other countries, expanding that so that businesses that are, exporting can get their cash back without having to incur that extra tax burden from the other countries.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Taiwo, you want to take that very quickly? Yes, short and sharp.
So thank you very much for that question. Yes, indeed, there is. There are two dimensions to it. We decided that we should prioritize what we can control as a country. So in those tax bills, we have what we call unilateral tax credit. So even if you don't have a double tax treaty with the country where you've paid the tax, we would give you the credit when you get back to Nigeria. So that would eliminate your double tax burden that you currently have. The second part of what we also put in the bills is that today, the Nigerian system, both the monetary authorities and the fiscal authorities, prescribe for you what you can do with your FX. We don't think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because what we're seeing is some exporters are externalizing the export proceed because they would rather have control of their FX than gain the tax advantage. That tells you the size of the problem. So in the bills, those restrictions have been removed completely. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you very much. No one is asking Carl about the 50%. Oh, I'm going to ask, if nobody asks. They're not feeling the impact. Okay. Carl, you are... No, blessed are those whose sins are not remembered. Not even forgiven, not remembered at all. There's a young man here. Yes.
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. So, firstly, I want to say that I sort of disagree with the position of our person that joined us online. I'm sorry, I skipped
Rick,
the name.
Yes, Rick.
Rick,
Yeah,
thank you. So as regards encouraging imports over, yes, because I believe that an average Nigerian so much have trust in imported goods over goods that are locally produced. So I think what we need to do is look for a way to manage our locally produced goods and sort of create a measures that would help people have more belief in our locally produced goods rather than encouraging more imports that would, at a particular stage, would kill our locally produced goods. That's that. Then, secondly, my question is for Mr. Taiwo. I have a list of questions, but just one.
I'm going to tax you on that. There's a tax for double questions.
So, so my question is, thank you for the presentation. However, I feel like you've not actually said something about the investors in the capital market, the money market. What are the benefits they would get from these tax reforms? So I think we would be interested in that as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Rick, you want to take that? Carl, would you? Yes, I want you to have a few words before you leave. Yes,
I am unfortunately in a live interview at 7 p.m.
Yes.
So I have to leave, and I couldn't juggle the interviews. Just to address the comment, the tariff increases haven't been implemented yet, but they're imminent. And the absolute focus, we've been told in no uncertain terms, that what comes with these tariff increases 2 to 3 months after implementation is very rigorous enforcement on quality of service. So we're expected to very quickly up our investment for capacity, our redundancy, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe I'll leave that as a final word. And please do forgive me, everyone. I really am on TVC at 7 p.m. live sharp. So apologies for rushing out now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. We appreciate that so much. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, we appreciate that. Very quickly, thank you for coming to the Investors Conclave 6.0. Thank you so much. Rick, you want to have a very quick intervention on the other question about import versus domestic production? Quickly.
Yeah. Okay, imports or opening the borders is just increasing competition. So what we have today, because the market is quite protected, nobody is interested in investing in his production, in his quality, in his services. As soon as we have competition from abroad, these services will increase. And I'm sure just local production will make the race on the end of the day if they can provide the same quality.
Well, thank you so much,
Nothing
Rick.
else.
And I think one of the things Rick also said is that, look, we can also be very strategic in areas for which we can do labeling, for example. Look, where is it? This. We can just produce the package, the box, the cellophane, whatever, with which this thing comes from Samsung, right? If Samsung gives Nigeria, a packaging company in Nigeria, maybe Smurfit Print or those listed on the exchange, and say, look, produce the package for this Samsung, iPhone, Apple, whatever, you know how much that will bring, will create jobs locally? Or just the label that goes into, or just the screen saver. So I think that's what he's saying, that we should just be competitive.
Exactly.
Morocco is doing a whole lot in aero industry, and they're now doing more than $2-3 billion in terms of aero servicing and all of that in Africa, using and repairing aircraft and what have you. They're not making aeroplanes like Airbus and Boeing, but they're leading the rest of the continent when it comes to aero industry. They're doing close to $10 billion every year by now. So that's a whole lot. So we can just start from what we can. If we do labeling, product, whatever, very well, we can invest in that. We have people who can do that. We can just get it a lot doing. Then, of course, we now go to main product manufacturing, the durable goods and what have you. Okay, any other question? I saw a few hands over there. Please, we'll take just a few more so that... Oh, yes, yes, I will. Sorry. My apologies.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. It's really about the capital market, money market, what's there for investors. So the first way we look at it is to say these are investors. So if we allow our reforms to make Nigeria more investor friendly, then you indirectly also impact on the capital market. So, and that would cut across issues around harmonizing taxes, reducing tax rates, allowing tax credit, taking away minimum tax on capital, and so on and so forth. But beyond that, we recognize that if you want to finance a $1 trillion economy, you need a capital market that works, and you need the financial sector to also work and be vibrant. The entire market cap of the Nigerian capital market is just slightly more than the most capitalized company in South Africa. The largest capitalized bank is more than all our banks combined, right? Capital market is not even up to $50 billion. It can't finance our development. They have over $1 trillion. So we recognize that we're at a stage where we must make a distinction between seed and fruit. And you know, one of the things we'll be saying, we don't want to tax seed, we'll wait for the fruit to come out. So you have exemptions in a number of cases, like withholding tax, mean the final tax when you receive those investment income. You have the threshold for exemption of capital gains. We're dealing with things around other levies and taxes like Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. For those who may be aware, they make companies pay a percentage of their market capitalization to finance Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria. That's not making a lot of sense to us. So there's quite a lot in those reforms for the capital market as well as the money market, because we want to be able to finance our growth.
Thank you so much, Taiwo. I have 1 or 2 points for my panelists before we close, but I'm going to allow the gentleman here very close to make an intervention.
Good evening. I think it's fortunate that you're here, Mr. Taiwo, because Mr. Taiwo, sorry about that, because the tax environment is can be likened to what we can say a disease that is ravaging businesses in this country. It's killed so many businesses. It stopped so many businesses from starting. And, you know, I liken it to maybe you find a cure for a very deadly disease. Now, the delivery process also matters. Now, your tax environment has created monsters. And when I say monsters, I mean people who actually work for this FRS. And they come with, how will I say, they come sort of like with a mission, you know, when they come to your offices as if they even own you. You know, they come with so much authority. I've had to put a lot of them in their place once in a while.
that, yeah, you can be the FRS, but you don't own this office, you know, and you show some respect. But the issue is, there was even a situation where I had two tax stations fighting for authority over where to pay tax to. And it baffled me that why would two government bodies of the same establishment be saying, no, you are under my jurisdiction. The other one is writing letters telling me that, no, you're not under them, you're under me. You know, and then I'm like, okay, who do I report to? You know, it took quite a while to get that sorted out.
Now you report to Taiwo.
So, as you're doing this wonderful tax reforms, from what I can hear, they're wonderful. How do you intend to let these tax reforms be delivered the way they're supposed to be delivered for us to get the benefits?
Okay, I guess this question is basically, can we have less aggressive FIRS? Is there any FIRS in the room? I need to be careful now.
Yeah.
Less aggressive.
Yeah. So very, very good question. But I would like to start. Yeah, I would like to start by saying, you know, it's not only FIRS. The very good people in FIRS, there are also monsters in FIRS. Relatively, the FIRS is even more professional and civil than the other levels of government. So it just gives you an idea of how bad it can really get. What we've put in the reforms, number one, is to reorganize how we administer taxes. The first point is there'll be far more use of technology. In fact, we have a session at the end of this month where we're looking at some guys who have developed the system for HMRC, South African Revenue Service, and want to replicate that in Nigeria. Number two is we're going to move to what we call a risk-based audit system. So it will not be an individual in the FRS that will decide they want to audit you. The system will flag you. So for every purchase, and I mentioned that briefly the other time, for every purchase, there's a buyer and there's a seller. If you buy something and you over-declare or under-declare, the system will say the two are not reconciling, and it will flag you. If you mostly sell things that are liable to VAT, the system will compare the turnover you declare with the VAT you remitted. So those exceptions will be flagged by the system. So which means if you try to do everything correctly, chances are nobody will come to you. The other part we are introducing that is really, really very important is we're going to have tax agent regulation. So most big companies who are the biggest taxpayers are represented by tax agents. Many of those tax agents are just as corrupt as many of the officers and as many of the taxpayers. So we want to address that as well. So if you are representing a taxpayer, you'll be identified in the system with a unique identity. And that identity and your ticket to be a tax agent is one, you must have technical competence and you must have ethical compliance. So when you violate any of those, the system will call you out and you can be deaccredited. Everything you do for your client in the system is traced to you. So if you go to your client and you say to them that withholding tax rate is 2% instead of 5%, when we find out, we know that you have advised many clients wrongly. Because when the tax agent misbehaves, it's like a virus. It's replicated in the system. Today, nobody is calling them to order. These reforms, we call them to order. So the taxpayer is called to order. The tax agent is being controlled and monitored. And so is the tax officer. So you see progressively, these things will disappear from the system. Yeah.
One or two final questions. The gentleman at the extreme end over there, thank you very much. Thank you.
I thought I was so short you didn't see me. Yeah, I think my question is for Tayo. If you would take your camera, yeah, so I can. It would be good to know if the reform is pro-rich or pro-poor. Because you talked about thresholds for poor people not paying taxes, but going over that. Because again, if the rich people pay more, I would want to know how you're going to address capital flight, because a lot of people move away to tax havens once they feel that the taxes are getting unbearable. It's good you mentioned Financial Reporting Council, because I would like to talk about agencies like FCCPC who are supposed to do consumer protection and competition, but they do 2% consumer protection, 98% competition because they charge people for M&As. And that money can be exorbitant. So it's another area that you need to look at.
All right, thank you very much. Taiwo, you want to take a look at that, and then we have about 3 questions online.
Yes, indeed. So you're right. The reforms are pro-everyone. So they are more pro-poor than they are pro-rich, but they are pro-everyone, and I'll tell you why. So sometimes people move with just the headline of something they don't like. And we say for our reforms, look at it holistically. So you may be paying 2% more somewhere, there's a 5% reduction somewhere, because there's no way you can do reform and things are kept in the same way. So for the rich people, the increase they will see is the income tax. So their personal income tax will go up marginally depending on how much money you make. The richest people, assuming you make like $1 billion a year, you pay close to 25%. And to be honest, even by African standard, that's one of the lowest. If you were in Kenya, you pay 35. If you're in South Africa, you pay over 40. So we think that 25 is ideal. And the other reason why we set it at 25 is we want to limit the arbitrage between formality and informality. So if you decide not to register a company and you're doing it as your name enterprises, you pay 25. And that was the reason why one of the reasons why we wanted to reduce the corporate income tax rate to 25. So the governors have said we shouldn't do it now. They haven't said we shouldn't do it. So we're still discussing when will be the appropriate time to bring it on board. We also have real estate in those reforms without VAT. You also would acknowledge that rich people are the ones who are able to invest in real estate. We have a very high threshold for capital gains exemption in the capital market. Again, that's also pro-rich people. And we also think that rich people mostly also own businesses. So all the waivers and the exemption we grant to businesses are indirectly granted to the rich people, including withholding tax rates are reduced, if not totally eliminated. We have the ones that will help them with their cash flow so that your working capital cost, for example, or finance cost generally is reduced. We have a provision to pay refunds very fast without questions asked. So the taxman will pay you refund first and then ask questions later. But God help you, you go and miscalculate. The penalty there is really, really very high. So, but in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is these reforms are pro-everyone. Some more than the others, but everybody benefits.
All right.
And then the regulatory one, we've also identified that as a problem. First thing we are doing is stop all agencies from collecting taxes and levies, right? And if you have to collect fees, you know there's a distinction between taxes, levies, and fees. So we're going to stop them from collecting taxes and levies, but not fees. If you render a service, you can collect fees. But what we have designed is that you cannot be the one setting your fees. And those fees must have limits. For example, you want to get incentive from NIPC, and they charge a percentage of your saving. In those bills, we cap it to 5 million. If I decide to invest $1 billion, why are you charging me so much money for that? And the other thing we have done that is really very good, in my view, is the tax ombudsman. So this reform will set up the tax ombudsman. Whether my friend there who doesn't like the FRS man not behaving well, or you thinking the regulator is just there trying to collect more money, the ombudsman is there to help. And we've given the ombudsman a lot of powers in those laws to be able to get results at no cost to you. We think this will particularly help taxpayers who are not able to hire people to defend them, lawyers, accountants, and they can't go through the court process. So we have them covered as well.
All right. Taiwo, I'm likely going to ask all the other panelists to leave because we are the man on the hot seat, because these 3 other questions are for you. So, Madam Director General, my friend at KPM, just sit down, just chill, have some water. Later, or you can pass the rest of your water bottles to Taiwo because it needs a bit more. A few, and of course we're online, so that's where these 3 questions are coming from. Are retirees exempt from paying withholding tax on investment income, CPs, NTBs, treasury bills, and all that?
Yeah. So we've sustained the exemption for REITs. So if you have real estate investment trusts, what we've designed in the bills is to make it tax transparent. Because what you're really doing is you're creating a vehicle to invest in property. So the investors are here, the property is here. Why create an extra layer of tax in between? So I can tell you that's sustained in the bills. We also have provisions for security lending. So anything where, because we want the market to create instruments and securities and not use tax to be the tail that is wagging the dog. Allow economic activities to happen and collect your taxes at the end, not upfront, not in between. So yes, for that person that has the question, we have that covered.
Thank you very much. That's very happy fine. So now that the VAT sharing aspect of the tax bill has been resolved at the National Assembly, are we proceeding with the other reform aspects that you talked about?
To be honest, I do not think that the Nigerian people care about how they share revenue amongst themselves. So we think it was a major issue for the people who are spending our money. Whatever we recommended, we meant it from the angle of promoting productivity, being fair to everyone. But because that was going to be the problem for all the other reforms, and like I said, if you have over 200 important reforms, why do you allow one to mess it up? So we're very happy for them to decide for us what they want. At the end of the day, we think we owe it to them to explain what we're trying to do. Even now, after they've told us what they want, we're working on the numbers to share with them. At the end of the day, if they're happy with it, we'll move on. We think that for the VAT reforms, people are more interested in the over 80% of the CPI basket that we are reducing or eliminating the VAT completely. I know many analysts keep insisting that we are proposing to increase the rate on 18% of consumption. They say inflation will go. I say, which inflation is going up? Because for all businesses, you get credit for your costs, whether it's an asset, whether it's inventory, whether it's services. That's reduction in the cost for businesses. Then for most items that we consume, you take out the VAT. It's called zero rating. We are zero rating over 60% of the basket, which means not only is the item not liable to VAT, any VAT that the producer has incurred is refunded 100%. Right? So we actually believe genuinely, based on our model, that our VAT reform, including where the rates will go up, altogether, we have a reduction of inflation impact on the economy. But it's okay. They also said we shouldn't do it now, and we respect that, and we will not do it now. We'll do it later.
All right, thank you. Another question still on the taxes. What's the plan to address informal tax collection? For example, the Omoniles, collecting levies for construction or moving into a property.
Yeah, so I have made this comment a couple of times that on paper, Nigerians are not paying a lot of taxes. But in reality, Nigerians are paying some of the highest, they're bearing some of the highest tax burdens in the world. You have the formal taxes, legislated, statutory. Then you have the informal taxes, which is there's no law supporting it, and you have to pay because they force you to pay. And then you have the implicit taxes. This is when you have to play the role of government. You have to add the three together to know your tax burden, and it's high. We think the only way you can genuinely increase the statutory take, the revenue you make from legislated taxes, is to deal with these other taxes. Because to the person who is paying, they believe they've paid tax, but a bulk of it is not getting to the government. So one, practically, we want to stop anyone who is not government from collecting taxes. Number two, we want to stop government from collecting illegal taxes, which means it hasn't been legislated. For taxes that are legal, we want to harmonize it. Don't duplicate the taxes. So you see that three layers of helping the people is very important, but we also acknowledge that from a practical point of view, when it comes to implementation, these guys on the streets will not disappear overnight. This was the reason one of the comments I made a few months back. The press got so excited, they intentionally sensationalized it.
That wasn't me.
No, you are not one of them. So I can, of course, I'm very glad you're not one of them. So we said we want to bring those guys on board. And they said, oh, Tinubu has asked them to start employing touts to collect taxes, chartered accountants don't have jobs. But what we're trying to say is that if I'm earning a living by doing illegality, I don't care when you enact a law. I need to survive, which means I'll go back there the day after your law has been enacted. You have to come and arrest me, right? How many people are you going to arrest? Who will do the arrest? In 2013, we got the approval of the National Economic Council, and we had the president in the room. It was President Jonathan at the time. And they gave us approval for all these multiple taxes. Nobody should do it. There should be no roadblock. And then they said the Inspector General of Police is hereby directed to arrest anyone. This is 2025. We're still waiting for the first arrest. So from a practical point of view, we say, how about we incorporate them in a way that they can continue to earn a living, but in a way that is civil. So they will not go and stop anyone. They will not collect cash from you. You can pay on your phone. For example, we say informal sector. Why don't we have over 180 subsectors in the informal sector? And we've categorized them: vulcanizer, tailor, hairdresser. If you're in the urban center, you are in the rural area, you have your rate. This is all the tax you pay for the whole year. 4,000 naira, for example. Pay that 4,000 naira as you find the money using your mobile phone. The day you pay 300, mobile phone will tell you your balance is 37. The day you pay 12, if we are supposed to finish paying by end of June for the year and you haven't finished paying and you have 1,000 naira left, from the following day, we can substitute your line for the amount you are owing government. Anytime you load credit from now on, the credit will go to government first.
Where is Carl?
Until you clear.
Carl has just left the room.
Until you clear your 1,000, you can receive calls.
Why did you delay this until Carl? It's the room.
But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is the world has really moved on, that you can get things done without being uncivil, without being... Sometimes we dehumanize people. One of the surveys that was conducted shows that people were physically assaulted in the process of having to pay tax. Just imagine somebody slapping you to collect tax. It cannot be the way we live in a country. All right, so I suppose that's enough.
I think this conclave is coming to about tax now, because all the... Okay, Rick has a few questions. Let's go to... Rick, are you there? And I think there's a question for you also, my friend. Let me just ask this from our partner from KPMG. Counsel us on the sectors likely to thrive more in this reform environment. What sectors? Could you please raise the other microphone volume, please?
Okay, what sectors where opportunity exists and that will drive reform? I think we've started to talk about them. One that is very clear, despite some of the challenge there, is agric, and being able to move from just crop production to processing and value addition. And I can say that, unfortunately, some of the things that is being done are not in the public domain. On Sunday, I was on my way from Abuja to Kano, and from Kano, we drove down to Jigawa, and we had opportunity of meeting with the governor. And when he explained the value they are creating within the agri-space and the cluster they are creating, with the intention of actually empowering these smallholder farmers and enable them to actually get to the marketplace. In that trip, you had the MD of Murphy in the room. We had the MD of the National Agricultural Development Fund. So I want to say that that's an area that government is actually interested in, and opportunity actually exists within that space. The second sector that also is opening up and opportunity exists is within the conversation around power and relating it to the conversation around gas. A couple of states already are moving in the direction of actually accelerating investment in that space by coming up with some regulatory reforms. We know Lagos State, for example, Enugu State, and Ekiti, and a couple of them. And what has also come to the fore is that you're seeing donor funds actually moving into that space. You are seeing, for example, even World Bank, providing close to about $750 million to actually accelerate delivery of renewable energy within the rural community. The plan is even to scale up that fund to actually about $1 billion. So that's another area where significant opportunity actually exists and where people can actually position themselves. And what is driving that is because of the subsidy removal. Because now everybody is thinking about what are the other alternative sources that is available. I think the other sector that opportunity exists, and I will stop there, is the conversation around logistics. In terms of, if you go just on the road, in the past, take about a few years ago, the bike guys you see on the road, moving things from one place to another, we don't have that. And we have several places across this country where you have significant population, where you can actually deploy. So like I said, I was in Kano. Think about the population, the kind of bikes and delivery guys that I see here, they're not in that space. So logistics is another area where significant opportunity exists, where people can actually take advantage, and it will power this economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Give a round of applause, please. Some business ideas. Rick, let's come to you. We've got one of our online participants asking the question about your experience in restructuring retail institutions around the world. How would you compare Nigeria's reality to those in Europe and other markets in terms of bringing local retailers on board, not necessarily from, South Africa, Kenya, moving from SA to Kenya or any other markets within Africa?
Okay, to start, retail is a very capital-intensive business. You have to build stores, you have to buy the merchandise, you have to control the supply chain. And I think that's the most important thing, to control this supply chain, starting with the buying office in Europe and in Far East, having a terminal on the harbor, have your own distribution center, and have your own trucks, your own truck fleet to bring the goods from your DC to your stores. So that is the thing, to control the whole business and to grow fast. Yeah? If you have that in place, you see Boko, for example, is a good example. They built up to 150 stores in the last 1.5 years, and they control the whole supply chain. So they have their distribution centers, they bring everything out, and they're doing a good job. And that's the way to go also for Nigeria. But it needs a lot of money.
Oh, okay, thank you so much, Rick. Madam Director General, may I come to you with this question from our online participants in terms of how much the Lagos Chamber of Commerce is working with the government and other agencies. I'm sure you're being a member of the Presidential Committee is a demonstration of the fact that the government appreciate what you're doing at the LCCI, the rest of your office and your team, and that's why you're included. So how much in terms of favorably influencing policies is coming from the LCCI as the largest and the oldest Chamber of Commerce?
Okay, so yes, you're right. We are on the committee, and one of the main things that we do at the chamber is advocacy. And we have about 26 sectoral groups, which means that we get to play in all of these sectors and engaging with their regulators. A lot of the issues that businesses have are sometimes not general issues, they're sector specific, so it's always helpful to be able to drill down. We also have cases where businesses are reluctant for good reasons to engage directly with government or their regulators, and being in a collective, we then become a platform where they can interact in a safe place with their regulators. So we do engage very actively. We also have times when we have to call the government officials to the table to dialogue. Sometimes our business owners don't quite understand the policies or guidelines of government, and we want to be that platform where they get that a bit more aware or knowledgeable about what government is doing, and so that dialogue is really useful. 2 days ago, we had the power roundtable, looking at the Lagos electricity law in Lagos, and the commissioner was there to speak. So there's a close engagement with the public sector, because the public sector should provide the environment, enabling environment for business, and then the private sector can thrive. So we are constantly in close contact with them to try and influence. So sometimes when they put out a law or a regulation and it's not going down well with our members, we have to not necessarily fight, but almost that, to try and change the narrative with them. So that's ongoing, that's constantly ongoing. We also then build capacity for even government agencies, so they understand the business angle to things. Because sometimes I was speaking to a particular agency, they had like this leadership team, and I was saying to them that, look, if businesses don't thrive under you, then you have failed. So you don't get any kudos. So they may pat you on the back because you've challenged businesses, you've caused trouble, you've arrested them, you've stopped business. You know, they can give you a pat on the back, but how fulfilled are you because the businesses are dying? So even the agencies need to understand the business angle to things, and so we facilitate those discussions to happen all the time. Yeah.
That should be part of the reform, Taiwo. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely, 120%. So I can tell you that the organized private sector and trade associations have been extremely, extremely helpful. I can tell you they engage constructively, particularly LCCI, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, NECA, NEG, for example. That's the only thing they do. So those constructive engagements help us, because you cannot feel the pain more than the person wearing the shoes, and that's exactly where they come in. But sometimes the sense I get is they don't know whether government is really listening, whether they are sincere, or whether they're just trying to tick a box. So I see a number of them that we engaged with, they were very happy when they saw the real sincerity of the engagement. And also even going back to people out of courtesy to give them feedback. I think there's sometimes is almost like master-servant mindset with many regulators. You are the big brother. I can remember, you know, so we have a CBN now that is more open to having debates and receiving input. I did that under the previous CBN leadership, and there was crisis, because I just went. They invited me to bankers committee, and the CEO, first I didn't even like the atmosphere in the room. It was like, I saw bank CEOs, they looked like secondary school kids. They couldn't express themselves, they were afraid. And me not having a banking license that you can revoke. I went and spoke my mind, and the governor didn't find it funny. Lambasted me there. Got so angry, say, who even invited me? And I was just saying CBN has no business. The simple thing I said, though, I said CBN has no business in stamp duties. They should not be the one directing banks to collect stamp duty or not to collect it. That is purely a fiscal matter. That was my crime. So at least today we now have a CBN where you could say that and heaven will not fall. So, but overall, we have to recognize that we have an economy that needs to work for us. We don't have a separate Nigeria for regulators and another one for the private sector. And I believe, if I like the point that she made, and it's one of the things I'm trying to get across within the government circle, we must redefine the KPIs of regulators. We should not clap for you because you are closing down businesses. Before we blink, you go and you say, because they are taking water and they've exceeded the depth of water, you close them. And some people can say you are emitting, you do not even provide electricity. You say, I'm emitting ozone 2 layer. Do you know where ozone layer?
Taiwo, don't get into any further trouble. So, my final point, just to begin to wind down with my panel, and I'm going to go back to Madam Director General. I didn't want us to, yes, we'll give room for just about one more question. So, but Madam Director General, in terms of leadership, when you talk about women in leadership and sustainable business practices, I want you to talk to the businessmen and women in the room in terms of what strategy that you would recommend in balancing profitability. Times are very, really hard, and then profitability, and then social sustainability practices, and ensuring that they have more women on board so that things get better.
Okay, thank you very much. So when we think about sustainability and profitability, they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually like one and the same thing. And so the World Bank says that we have about 32 million tons of waste every year. And businesses need to begin to think innovatively, how do we recycle? So today there's a whole like ecosystem emerging around the circular economy, right? So that's where businesses need to play more, because you're going to be creating new products and new services that way by thinking sustainability, and that then enhances profitability. Some companies think, oh, CSR, let's do some things, let's contribute to the community. But CSR initiatives can actually further your sustainability agenda, but also profitability. So if you're in a community and you spend money or effort in maybe healthcare, education, it comes back to you in the sense that it gives you license to operate in that community, but it also enhances the labor, labor productivity in that entire community, and that helps you with your efficiency and productivity. So there are several things that businesses can do to enhance sustainability, but let's think gender. I'm hoping that you're going to take one last question, and maybe to be a female. I've not heard any female ask any question today.
I'm not doing a Trump. I'm not.
And so for gender, so everybody talks, oh, gender, we need to enhance diversity. I heard a business leader saying, oh, that in my business, all the subsidiaries, we ensure that we have one woman on board. And I'm thinking, how is that helpful? Because one woman, that's really nothing. We should just be pushing towards like 30%. Today, in the National Assembly, I think we have less than 5%. As a nation and as business people, we must understand that having women on board enhances business. We have studies upon studies to say that, but if you just look around in your families and in your homes and the impact of women in those places, you realize that if you have them in your businesses, you will, you kind of just go into the next level. But for women as well, I say to them, you need to up your game. We need to kind of be seen and be heard. So I'm hoping that the woman will ask a question today, because if we want to have women on board, and we say we need women on board, but if we don't start at the bottom to build up, then by the time you get to the top, there are very few women up there at the top. So we need to have structural we have to have structural reforms within our organizations to maybe block the leak. They call it leaking pipe at the bottom. They are moving away, or the broken rung. But we need to have some structural way to retain our female talents because they are so meaningful. One way somebody put it said, if you have two hands, you can't clap with one hand. So if you have two genders, you can't do business with only one. So you have to deploy the female soldiers into the battlefield, and winning will be yours.
The women are on the battlefield. My wife actually saved the little bungalow we're building from the Omoniles just a few weeks ago, because she was the one there, and she called me and said, hey, the Omoniles are here. So women are really...
We should have a female ask questions. I'm still seeing male hands.
Now she's in charge. All next hands. Now. Michael, help me here. Mohammed, anyone? Okay, please, ladies, let me stand up and make this appeal. Let me pass the microphone directly. Thank you. Mia. My lady, Mia, please. Thank you. Take the microphone. And just say,
Well done. Okay, let me say well done. You are the only lady on the panel, and you've represented us so well. And thank you for all of your input and the discussion so far.
Okay. Well, I would align with her. Okay. Okay, I think I have a question for everyone here. I'm a lawyer and I work with an advisory firm. And so I'm wondering, what would you think you would, how can we partner with all of the business people? Be thinking outside the box. I'm available to network after the event as well.
Let me pass it on. Please.
Are we really going around?
And over to her. Thank you.
Okay. I actually do have a question for the partner. He had talked a lot about energy, which is a space I'm quite interested in learning more about. So just for my own understanding, when you talked about regulatory reforms around transmission and then cost-reflective tariffs, if you could just share more on what that really means, that was something that stuck out to me. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adetutu. I'd really like to commend Mr. Taiwo Oyedele for everything he's done so far. I think I've listened to him multiple times in different occasions where he's always tried his best to break things down, to carry everybody along. And for the first time, personally, I see someone who is genuinely and passionately interested in these reforms. I think it's very commendable. It's not something you find in government. And I think it's just a breath of fresh air. And I really believe in him. I hope we are able to, move past all these bottlenecks and, implement everything. I believe that Nigerians will be better for it. So thank you so much. I mean, your guys from PwC, they've all said good things about you. You've always been a teacher, you've always been a mentor, and you continue to be that person. And so thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, I echo what the ladies have said. Taiwo, thank you very much. We've actually had a very good laugh over here, over your comments, your sense of humor, everything you said, and you've actually distilled the information to us in a very relatable manner. Thank you to Dr. Chinyere over there as well. You have represented the ladies well. You have put us on the spot, but overall, I came to learn more. I didn't necessarily want to ask a question, but I commend everyone. I have taken a lot out of this information, and I will share with my clients. Thank you very much.
So, with regards to the question around the transmission as well as regulatory reforms, I think that was the question. So the point I'm making specifically with regards to power is that today, based on the regulatory landscape, which is driven by NEC, they have a model which is called MITO. What that model says is basically to say what are your cost elements, your capex, as well as other costs. Now, there are certain costs that are extremely sensitive to market conditions. So one of them is inflation rate. Another is exchange rate. So what we've seen in the past is that some of those costs are not allowed to be adjusted to reflect the realities within the market. So when people are actually paying, they are paying, for energy below the marginal cost of producing the power. So basically, moving into cost-reflective tariff is basically saying, let's ensure that some of those variables are adjusted to respond to market dynamics. And when you do that, then you accelerate investment. The other thing with regards to regulatory environment is what Taiwo has been doing. Regulatory environment should actually enable the business, or as against you're coming in with a posture of you want to take from the business and make it extremely impossible to actually enable them to succeed. So enable the business, be transparent, ensure that you give them opportunity to make that investment. So that's what I was saying about regulatory environment. And to close that, I think we are in an era that is reform-oriented. This is a government that appears to listen, and I think opportunity exists for anyone in any sector to try and find a way to organize ourselves in a strategic manner to push, areas where we think reforms needs to take place. Yes, it comes with some pain at the beginning, but imagine, I had opportunity for past administration where we're meeting almost once every month for 3 years, and some of those suggestions were not taken forward. But you're in an era where before you even say it, the person in charge understands where you are coming from and is willing to actually respond. And it's being done in first time. You understand? Saying that if that is being done now, and we're not thinking about, what happens, in about 2 years' time. So the point I'm making is that these reforms, this is an opportunity for every one of us within your circle to organize yourself and push agenda that can actually help. And there are various personalities in government today that are, responsive and will have opportunity here. So that's my response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for him. Thank you. Thank you. And to all my panelists. Rick, are you still there? Rick, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, someone is...
Sorry for extending the question, but there's something I asked Mr. Idele. I wanted him to pay emphasis on, because I'm also a business owner and I operate out of Lagos and Ogun State. And what I want to get clarification on is how your committee is interfacing with the various state tax collection agencies, because we all know how much tax collection has multiplied the IGR of different states, and I'm sure they would also want to be part of what you're doing, because from everything you've done now, with automation coming in and human contact being reduced and everything being computerized, how much are you doing with the different states so that we small businesses operating in various states know our rights and how to interact with them? Thank you.
Yeah, very good question, actually. So at the moment, we are very well connected in our reform plans with the states. In fact, they are the most represented group of people in our committee. So we have all the 6 geopolitical zones represented as permanent member of the committee. Beyond that, we're also visiting some of the states, and we've codified in those tax bills how to harmonize. For example, if you have a tax clearance certificate from Lagos State because you are resident in Lagos State and you are buying land in Ogun State, nobody should ask you to come and pay again in Ogun State. That's what happens today. So under these reforms, those will be sorted. The one that is a little bit more complicated is the local government. So what we've done is to try and push that forward to the next phase, because there are also constitutional issues with the local government. Under the 4th schedule of the Constitution, it empowers local government to collect, listen to it, wheelbarrow tax, bicycle tax, radio and license. Yeah. So in those days, when those things were written in the law, like in my village, there were 2 people that had black and white TVs. They were the richest people in our village. So at that time, if you asked them to pay a tax based on the fact that they had a TV, you were taxing richest people. but it's no longer making sense today. Who taxes someone that is doing wheelbarrow up and down just to survive? So we feel that we have to, one, our plan A, we think that if the law empowers you to collect tax, it also empowers you not to collect it. So if we can get that understanding, it will be the fastest one. So our plan B is, in fact, if that fails, which is likely for many of them, then we already have a proposal with the National Assembly to amend the Constitution, but we know that will take time realistically. In the meantime, we're using the FCT to pilot because Mr. President is effectively the governor of the FCT. We've met with the area councils, we are aligned, we're just working out the details. And Lagos State has also promised us that they are ready to jump on it. So if you get the FCT and Lagos State, then from there you replicate to the other state. So it will be a fairly long journey, but the process has started. Right.
Thank you. Round of applause for him. I think that's the final one. Actually, that's not the final one.
I have the mic.
Yeah, but I have the lady.
Oh.
Okay, you have the floor. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. My question is to Taiwo. How is your team collaborating with CBN and Monetary Policy Committee in boosting investment without conflicting objectives? For example, you and your team, you are trying to remove all forms of bottlenecks, trying to reduce common income tax just to boost investment. However, almost every Monetary Policy Committee meeting, the MPR is increasing, frustrating investors from borrowing. So how are you collaborating, to boost investment while not promoting conflicting objectives?
Yeah, thank you. A very important question. So we are working together well. In fact, we have a joint team between the Presidential Committee and the CBN. From their side is led by the Deputy Governor, Economic Policy. For many of our engagements, we had the governor and all the 4 deputies there. So it's something they've taken very seriously, and we're glad and we appreciate them for that. But once it comes to the view we have taken is that we can only share our perspective and data that we have with them. But for their independence, they have the right 100% to make their final call. They can listen to it and say, well, we're still hiking interest rates, right? I can say to them when we're one-on-one to say, actually, I don't agree with your increase in rates. But one thing we've agreed on is that they said once the fiscal side is coming to the play, it will help the monetary side, and I agree with them. So some of the things we are doing now is to try and address where the fiscal authorities or the policy side is complicating the monetary authorities' work. And as we make progress in that direction, you will see that, going forward, you have more alignment. I personally don't think that we should be paying those kind of very high interest rates, because when you take the MPR, you must bear in mind there's also the CRR where 50% of deposits is sterilized, and then there's the asymmetric corridor of 500 basis points. By the time you finish adding it up, I don't know any business you can do legitimately to pay those kind of costs. The CBN has said to us that this is temporary, and we believe them. So we expect that in 2025, those rates will start coming down.
Thank you very much. Now to the final. Thank you for coming to the conclave.
Thank you very much. And thank you for recognizing the women in the room. Dr. Chinyere, I think you practicalized the theme for today, pressure to Plateau. And you actually pressured the ladies to take the mic, and we all spoke. So thank you very much, Dr. Chinyere. My name is Dr. Joy, and I represent the organization, the Entrepreneurship Village, that hosted the Global Entrepreneurship Festival in November. Now, there are a few questions that I would like to ask, because in November, we brought about 50 plus countries into Nigeria, and we had the world come to Nigeria. We had Nigerians come to Akure, and there were a lot of people that visited Akure for the first time. Now, we had people who directly invested in some of the entrepreneurs that were at the festival and 3 days event. very, very impactful. But a few questions kept coming up. People from outside Nigeria, they want to invest in social enterprise. What kind of tax reforms are there to ensure that social enterprises have better opportunities and are also not put apart with limited liability companies, because their goal is socially driven and not just for profit? And then secondly, another question that kept reoccurring was, I think some people have equity, but what protections do they have such that when they make their investments in Nigeria, when they need their funds back, it's easily taken out because they've encountered some challenges trying to recoup their investments from Nigeria? Thank you to everyone on the seat, and thank you for recognizing the woman. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you to CardinalStone.
Yeah,
Okay,
let me
that's the
start
last
with
one.
the second one. So being able to take your money out anytime we want has both the monetary side and the fiscal side. On the fiscal side, we've addressed those issues in the tax reform bills. For example, all those requirements of you must bring these before you can bid for dollars, your TCC. When you have the dollar, you must do X, Y, Z. In fact, we've proposed to remove the certificate of capital importation as a requirement. So just let people bring money and take it out, so long as they're not funding terrorism, right? So even if the money is not clean, I'll allow you to invest and then we'll discuss later, right? So we have those. From the monetary side, they already said to us, and they're working at it, so I believe them again as well, that they're going to allow those, because we were constrained in terms of availability of FX. Reserve was, only God even knows what the unencumbered portion was, but that's getting better. So the combination of those two will mean that the experience will be much better going forward. On the social impact, we actually had an extensive debate on our committee, and we had 3 categories of businesses. So the guys who are just out for business, the guys who are non-for-profit, and then in between is the social entrepreneurs. And we're actually thinking of a lower tax rate for them. But we couldn't carry it through because we said we're going to have difficulties trying to set out who is everybody. In fact, my brother that was here would say that telecommunication is partly social. So at the moment, what we have done is limited, and I'll tell you what it is. So for anyone who is supporting those businesses, we have a clearer part in the tax laws for getting deductions for the contributions that you make, without going to the minister to get his approval to be gazetted. We've simplified it. And then for many of those social entrepreneurs, to the extent that they are within the threshold of exemptions, they will not pay any CIT. Most of them are really small, to be honest. The ones that are really big, the other thing is we have a priority sector incentive schemes where some of those sectors have been captured. So what you can then do is take advantage of those incentives that are there, and you can get exemption from not paying taxes for, in some cases, up to 10 years. So that's the little we have been able to do. Right.
All right. Thank you so much, Taiwo, for those points well elucidated. Thank you, everyone. Please, a round of applause for my panelists. Thank you also to Rick. Please give them a big round of applause. I'm sure even if you attend wedding ceremonies these days, Taiwo is going to be about a tax on the wedding. On wedding planners, there's tax to pay for wedding planners. There's a tax also. They're exempted. Okay, let's have more weddings. They're small businesses. Thank you, Madam Director General. Thank you so, as well as partner at KPMG. Thank you, Rick. We want to do some presentations for them. Who is handling that for us, please? Rick, thank you very much for being part of the Investors Conclave. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Do have a very great evening. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
On behalf of CardinalStone, we'll do the presentations with the group photographs of the panelists out here, and I'm sure all the partners will have to be part of the group photographs, please. Who's making the presentations on behalf of CardinalStone? Who's making the presentations? Okay, I can make the presentation, then take the last one. Boom. Okay, let's please, this one, madam, please join us on the. Okay, I think we should do it here because of the, because of the background. Yes, that is, yes, and in front of him. Okay. Let's make, no, I'm the GM. I'm the gate man, so let's make the first two. Oh, Taiwo, you're representing the president. But allow us to make the first two Lady Director General. Yes. Please, madam, please step forward. Mike, I think Michael should be doing that presentation. Michael, I'm sorry. Madam Director General, could you please step a little bit? Thank you. I think it's the other way. Yes, exactly. All right. A round of applause, please, for Madam Director General. Thank you very much, Michael, for making that happen. Thank you very much. Okay, and then Taiwo Idile, please. You'll get someone to pick it, madam. Yes, then we'll do a group photograph later. Taiwo, a little bit inward. Yes. Michael, a little bit inward. Michael, one step, yes. We want to capture the background. A little bit of smile. I said, it's the tax that is in the box. Okay, thank you. So they'll bring it, yes. Yeah, please, a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Dilo. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Okay, now let's have a group photograph with, no, can you just leave that for a moment? Yes, please, let's have the group photograph. Michael, Mohammed, and I think we should do who else should be here? Yes, other partners should please join us. Mohammed, you're here? Okay. Okay, let's have it a bit of a curve. Yes. Would you kindly come this way, sir? Yes. No. Because of the background, the video. Yes, so that's why he should be here. Then you go there. Yes, he come here, you go there. Okay, thank you very much. Please, let's just give a few minutes. I'm going to pass the microphone to, please, may we please take our seats. Let's allow the Group Managing Director, Michael Nzewu, to make a few closing remarks, and then we'll take the anthem, and of course, we'll have the closing cocktail and networking. Thank you, Michael. You have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I think it's a bit noisy at the back. A few minutes, please. Let's just wrap up, guys. Once again, good evening, everyone. I think everything I've heard from the panelists have further reinforced the optimism I've been having since the beginning of the year. I think in the 16 years since we started CardinalStone, I've never felt more positive in January than this January. How quickly the country has been able to go through the FX reforms and the subsidy reforms. You know, these are problems we've had for at least 40 years, and I always thought that it was going to be a very bumpy ride to get through. But it's 2 years, and we're now living with the reality, and we've kind of stabilized around where we find ourselves today, and businesses are prepared and are preparing to work off that. So I think Taiwo talked about the savings from the FX subsidy and the energy subsidy, which comes to about 5% of our GDP. That's very massive, you know, and that is revenues that will accrue to the government or savings to government for infrastructure and other things the government wants to do. I think he also talked about higher oil production. That really caught my attention because 1.9 million barrels, I mean, what we've been hearing is around 1.6, 1.7, which we were we felt very good about those levels. But if we are anywhere around 1.9, you know, by the time the impact of this sales start coming in a few months down the line, that should improve the liquidity of dollars in the foreign exchange market. I think another very strong point, which I really liked, was the fact that we no longer do ways and means. That was also a very, very, will I say, bad behavior, you know, from the past, which thankfully this government has been able to deal with that very quickly. I think as we move into the capital market specifically, we would like to also see some reforms in the markets. We would like the NGX and the whole capital market to try and also start reforming with what we are seeing from the government. Today, we still trade for just about 4 hours in the market. Markets open at 10 and close at 2:30 or something like that. You talked about South Africa. I think their markets open at 9 and they trade till maybe 4 p.m. That's something we should be able to catch on easily if we really want to improve, you know, the liquidity in these markets. We should introduce new products. We've talked about products like futures and options and derivatives for such a long time, and it hasn't happened. We are hoping that some of those things, with the intensity of the work going on that, if we can improve that intensity, some of those should happen in the very near future and should improve the market. And then we would like to see more listings, right? Last year, CardinalStone worked with Aradel PLC to list the company on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and that was a listing of about 3 trillion, which is the largest listing, by the way, in the history of our market. 3 trillion is 5% of the market. So why can't we have more Aradels come to the market? There are a number of oil companies everywhere, locally owned oil companies. We are hoping that as you work on your tax reform 2.0, maybe you can put incentives in the system or in the policy that will encourage those companies to list on the market. You know, give them tax incentives. Maybe a listed oil company pays X rate versus what the non-listed one is paying. Because we talk about South Africa at 1 trillion, Nigeria at less than 50 billion. The mining companies, they are listed. The infrastructure companies, they are listed. They have listed port entities in those jurisdictions. You know, why can't we reform some of our parastatals, whether it's Nigerian Ports Authority, whether it's Lagos State Mass Transit, whatever, to a point where those companies can actually be listed on the market. So that is work for all of us in this room, the advisors and the professionals, and of course, the government side. You know, we want policies and we want the will from their side to want to encourage those companies to come to the market. In the end, it's a win-win situation for everyone because those companies become more transparent, we can see their revenues, and the government can get more tax revenues. We're not going to get close to South Africa with just the banks and a few multinationals listed. Now, I think Carl also touched on energy and how we can leapfrog from what we currently have. I think those are opportunities for infrastructure funds. The renewable energy sector, he talked about how people will be able to put up those upfront costs and help people acquire those renewable assets, whether it's the panels and the batteries. Those are opportunities for infrastructure funds. And I know quite well that in 2025, CardinalStone is working on bringing an infrastructure fund to the market. So, and I think a lot of what was discussed in this room today will still point to the fact that we have huge infrastructure deficits in the system. It requires capital to cover those huge deficits. So, and this is not just to CardinalStone, everyone in the system. You know, what can we do to provide the long-term financing to reduce those gaps? I think finally, for most of us, what we're also saying is that technology is a space we shouldn't ignore. And if I use our own environment, now I'm talking of CardinalStone, technology is one area that we should really be looking at in the sector. Today, or was it yesterday, we heard the announcement from Trump about a $500 billion investment for artificial intelligence, right? In years to come, literally everything we're doing will be done by AI. Recently, there was something going around in social media that even at Goldman Sachs today, 95% of their IPO documents can be done with AI. So what's the implication of that for all of us? Many people, I think, in Nigeria are not paying the attention that is required because this is an opportunity we can actually use to leapfrog. It is here, it is real. So as we plan for 2025, let us increase the resources, whether it's things from basic training of your people to adoption of those technologies, and you see the quantum leap that it's going to create for you in your businesses. I think finally, I would just like to say thank you to the panelists, Dr. Chinyere, who was my boss at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Taiwo Idele. This is the second time, I think, we are calling you to this event, but this is Taiwo 2.0. The previous Taiwo wasn't as humorous, so I think that must have come from working with government. And then Carl, who had to rush out for another event. I think I'm missing one of the panelists. Ricky online, and yeah, thank you very much. And to my colleagues who put this together, Philip, Busola, and the rest of the team, thank you very much. I couldn't thank you any better. I know the year has started, you know, it's been an extremely busy start to the year, and thank you for pulling this off once again. Let's stay back. There is some networking, 30 minutes, 1 hour cocktail for everyone, and let's get to know each other better, and I wish you all a wonderful 2025.
Just really appreciate it. Let's just all stand for the anthem of the Federal Republic of Nigeria just to wrap up the 6.0 Investors Conclave of CardinalStone. Please, the anthem, please. Have a pleasant evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to CardinalStone Investors Conclave 6.0. And that is bringing it to a formal close. We'll see you again in 2026. Bye for now.